In the Rocha Empire, the 4 Grand Dukes possessing special abilities have even greater power than the Emperor. In these 4 clans, only one person in each generation can inherit the ability. Although those who possess abilities are extremely powerful, the more they use them, the more accumulates in their bodies. This causes them to endure extreme pain and often pass away very early. The only one capable of purifying is the Horn, who possesses healing powers, and Agnes is that very person. Because of this healing ability, she died in agonizing pain in her previous life, in total exhaustion, when she opened her eyes once again. She was astonished to find herself back at the age of 7. Clearly aware of the time, she immediately rushed outside. She had to quickly escape from here, for tomorrow was the day. Tomorrow, her uncle would take her to the street to sell her, and she would also be discovered by Duke Goff, a possessor of clairvoyance who would discover her healing ability, and from then on, she would become his exclusive horn. She would have to purify the in his body day and night, but every time she performed the purification, Agnes's heart would feel a sharp, intense pain, yet the Duke never cared about her feelings, only persistently forcing her to purify. She continued like that for 10 long years until she died. Therefore, she never wanted to live those days again. She had to escape from this uncle, but at a street corner, she bumped into someone and had to stop. Who were they? Had they come to take her away? The little girl was terrified, and at that exact moment, the uncle caught up, shouting and demanding to take the little girl back. But the other man did not bother to pay him any attention. Instead, he looked toward the frightened little girl. The girl was so thin that she looked only 5 years old, even though she was actually 7. It was clear that the days spent living with this uncle were certainly not pleasant. If he brought this child back to be a friend for his son, they would probably play well together. The Duke reached out his hand toward her, asking the little bean if she wanted to go home with him. But the little girl only timidly asked if he would hurt her. This statement immediately caused the 2 men there to glare angrily at the uncle. Without even thinking, they knew this girl had certainly been abused quite a bit, so the man said nothing, directly picking the little girl up and vowing that, from now on, no matter what happened, he would not let this little girl suffer any harm. The little bean girl, who was reborn, had unexpectedly become the adopted daughter of the assassin family. The ability of this family is to control the opponent's breath, which can be called killing invisibly, and their current head. Duke Roderick is known as a murderous butcher, so the little girl must always stay vigilant. She cannot let Duke Roderick discover the truth that she is a horn. But her tiny body was now exhausted. The little girl could not take it anymore and fell asleep. Her sleeping face looked so adorable, but at this moment, the little girl was actually sinking deep into a nightmare of her previous life. While locked in a dungeon, she heard the guards gossiping that Duke Goff had been defeated and was preparing to sell her at a high price to other ability users. But her already broken body could not endure any further intrusion of Suddenly, she felt a surge of denser than ever before. It seemed the new buyer had arrived regardless of how much pain she was in. These people would not care. Perhaps dying would be better. At this time, the sleeping girl was already soaked in tears. Duke Roderick gently wiped the tears for her, wondering what this child had actually gone through over the past years. When the little girl woke up again, she had been dressed neatly by the maids. Her adorable appearance made everyone love her. Right at this moment, the butler, who was good at intervening, spoke up to ask if the little girl had a name yet. Name? At her uncle's house, she was called a useless piece of trash. And when she went to Duke Goff's house, her name was Agnes. But in this life, she did not want due name anymore. Therefore, she told the butler that she did not have a name. That way, Duke Roderick would grant her a new name, symbolizing a new life. Because most people working here were named by Duke Roderick, it is like a gift from him for those who want to forget their past. Rep brings the investigation news about the little girl's past. To report to Duke Roderick, it turns out the little girl's mother gave birth to her by the roadside. Having no place to turn, the mother and daughter had to find the younger brother. But this man rented the little girl out to beggars to go begging when she was a bit older. She even had to shoulder all kinds of housework. Z grows more angry while speaking. Duke Roderick thinks, the weakness of this type of person is money. So give him a sum of money, but forbid him from working for the rest of his life. That is the best punishment for him. At this time, Duke Roderick seems to have thought of a suitable name for the little girl. He writes it in an envelope, then hands it to Z, instructing that this envelope must be opened by the girl herself and she must read the name inside aloud. If she is illiterate, you all choose another name for her. Hearing this, Z is very skeptical. With such an upbringing, the little girl certainly cannot be literate. But Duke Roderick does not think so. He always feels there is something unusual about this little girl. Therefore, when Z hands the envelope to the little girl, In his heart, he has actually already prepared another name. The little girl originally intended to pretend she couldn't read. But this name is so strange to her, so she involuntarily reads it aloud. But why is the little girl's new name Chi Roderick? Why does it share the same last name as the Duke? While everyone is still immersed in shock, the butler is the first to react. My lady, congratulations on your new identity. The butler truly lives up to his title with such a quick reaction. The Duke also arrives just then. Asking how it went, did the child read the name? Seeing the Duke arrive, the little girl immediately speaks her doubt. Why do I have the last name Roderick? But the Duke only cares. What? Do you not like this name? Like it? She only remembers her previous life. Having the same last name was just a weapon, used in the name of family to bind her. When at her uncle's house, no matter how she was abused, no one cared because they were family. When at Duke Goff's house, it was also because they were family. That he could force her to purify endlessly, never caring about her life or death. And now it is Duke Roderick. Could it be that he also wants to use the name of family to bind her? Thinking of this, the little girl's face turns pale. This immediately attracts the Duke's attention. What's wrong? If you don't like... Before he can finish his sentence, the little girl suddenly begins to hiccup. The hiccups won't stop, making her unable to speak properly. Duke Roderick, seeing her frantic state, directly uses his ability to cure her hiccups. This leaves the little girl extremely astonished. She knows very well about abilities. Using them accumulates and reduces lifespan. Yet he used it just to cure a trivial case of hiccups. This isn't right. Could the Duke also have discovered her identity as a horn? But in her previous life, Duke Goff clearly said, only he, the possessor of clairvoyance, could recognize a horn. So how could Duke Roderick know? No, it is too early to confirm this. Furthermore, if she leaves here and happens to be discovered by Duke Goff, that would be the true end. No, I like this name very much. Hearing this answer, the Duke is very satisfied. Then from now on, you are my daughter. From now on, call me father. The warm moment does not last long. Duke Roderick is in his office when an attendant suddenly reports, the young master and young lady have gone missing. Chick, who had just been adopted by Duke Roderick, has been kidnapped. And the mastermind is none other than the Duke's heir, young Master Deian. Yesterday, when meeting Deian for the first time, Chick discovered a lot of accumulated in his body. And through his cold attitude. She also knew he hated her, but she didn't expect that today, upon learning Chick became the Duke's adopted daughter, he would lead her into the demon forest. As night falls in this forest, not only is the entrance closed, but the inside turns into a maze where monsters appear alongside the darkness. Therefore, when she felt something was wrong, she immediately pulled Deian's hand. Brother, my legs hurt so much, can we go back? Hearing the words brother, Deian immediately overreacted. Who wants to be your brother? At this time, Chick told her story from her previous life with half truth and half fiction. Her main point was to express that she, like Deian, had things she hated very much. Deian hated humans while she hated pain, so now her legs hurt very much and she didn't want to walk anymore. She continued to tell about how she had escaped several times. But every time she was caught back, and each time she was caught, she was tortured. Once she almost died but then survived. Hearing this, Deian was involuntarily intrigued. How did you do it? At that time, I naturally only knew how to constantly pray to the gods, begging that I wouldn't have to suffer anymore. She thought back carefully. In her previous life, when she was dying, the ability users who came to pick her up probably included Deian among them. Hearing Chi say she only prayed, Deian showed contempt. If praying were useful, then the gods wouldn't have failed to grant any of my wishes at all. Seeing this, Chick immediately said she could pray on Deian's behalf. After all, the gods had granted her wish once. Maybe she could pray one more time. Deian immediately realized Chick was comforting him, and his face involuntarily turned red. Seeing the atmosphere had softened, Chick asked, Brother, why did you bring me into the forest? Deian accidentally let slip his purpose of wanting to lead her to the monsters. Hearing this, Chi couldn't hold back anymore. What on earth do you want to do? You don't want to kill me, do you? Hearing that, Deian was also a bit embarrassed. Of course I wasn't thinking of killing you, I just wanted to scare you a bit. But she could not listen any further. You do want to kill me. Why do I just want to live in peace? Yet it's so difficult. I never even thought I would become a member of the Roderick family. Even if you didn't drive me away, I would only stay for a few years. She cried incessantly, making Deian flustered. Suddenly, a rustling sound echoed in the forest. The trees moved constantly. Unexpectedly, it was already this dark and monsters had appeared. Just as he finished speaking, a pack of red-eyed monsters appeared. Deian immediately pulled Chi and ran. But there were also monsters blocking the path ahead. There was no other way. He had to use his ability to deal with one, but there was still a whole pack behind them. The two of them rushed into the demon forest, facing a situation with wolves in front and tigers behind, with no external support. Deian could only unleash his ultimate move, using his unique ability to control the breath of the monsters, making them suffocate to death. But monsters appeared continuously, causing the 9-year-old boy to gradually become exhausted. Finally, when the last monster fell, he could no longer hold on. If monsters appear again, don't worry about me, you must run very fast. After saying that, he fainted. The cause of fainting was the accumulation of too much, This time, it was Chi's turn to be in a difficult position. After all, she was the only horn, but if she purified Deian now, her identity would surely be exposed. But thinking back, her previous life had actually ended in the basement of Duke Goff's house, the brief hope she gained today. Though it had only been one day and didn't feel real yet, didn't she already have a father and a brother? Therefore, she would still find a way to save her brother. Carrying this life-risking determination, Chi began the purification. At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. "Oh, it's a horn!" The sound came from within the twinkling stars around. Next, more and more stars appeared. They all requested Chi to sign a contract with them. As long as they signed a contract with a horn, they could escape from here. Chi didn't want to hear any of this. She now only wanted to focus on purifying Deian. Just then, a lake appeared before Chi's eyes. A star flew down and landed on her face. "Can you hear me? I told you to hurry up and sign a contract with me." At the same time, more stars appeared. They constantly urged her to sign the contract. Otherwise, when the largest star appears in a moment, it will be the end. The largest star? More new information. What is the largest star? This made Chi extremely confused right at this moment. The surface of the lake suddenly surged, accompanied by a massive buzzing sound. Sure enough, an incredibly dazzling star appeared. After this twinkling star appeared, the other small stars all disappeared while it hovered over Chi's head. Aha, no wonder I felt something was wrong. Seeing you, I finally understand. This isn't the first time you've done this, right? I am very satisfied. Chick only saw a devious smiling mouth revealed within the blinding light. Seeing this situation, Chick could only hold Deian tightly. This star was too eerie. If it wanted to take her life, she had to finish purifying Deian first. Even though the purification process made Chick feel immense pain, she still persevered. Meanwhile, in another place, Duke Rodri led Z into the demon forest to search for the two children's whereabouts. As they destroyed the monsters, they realized there were an unusually high number of monsters today. This made Z a bit worried for the safety of the two children. The Duke, however, believed that Deian was the one with the strongest ability among all generations of ability users. The boy would likely be fine. The most important thing right now was Chi's safety. Suddenly, a rustling sound caught the Duke's attention. Lying on the ground, ahead were the two people they had been desperately searching for. The two were even holding hands. It seems there will be many things to ask clearly once they wake up. Finally, a ray of sunlight shone on Chi's face. She slowly woke up. She had actually woken up in a magnificent room like this. "Where is this?" Suddenly Anna ran in. "My lady!" "You are finally awake." Chi listened to Anna recount the situation. Duke Rodri had come to rescue them. At that time, there happened to be a bird-shaped monster aiming at them. Luckily, the Duke and the others arrived in time. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unpredictable. Therefore, you must have been very frightened, which is why you have been unconscious for an entire day. It turns out I've been asleep for that long. So how is young Master Deian? "Ma'am, the young master has been locked up." Don't look so happy when saying your young master is locked up. Inside the house where Deian was locked, Z brought breakfast. "Still the same poker-faced young master today. I'll just have to deal with it." "Who told you to take a 7-year-old lady into the demon forest? This was your fault after all. Is the little one awake yet?" Anyway, before I came here, I hadn't heard news of the lady waking up yet. So the young master is worried about the lady, right? I am not. Get out. Fine. Unexpectedly, our heartless young master now knows how to proactively care for others. I said I'm not worried about anyone. I just have a question I want to ask. After he woke up yesterday, he clearly felt the constant stinging pain around his heart had disappeared. That night, he had used so much ability. Logically, the stinging pain should have been even worse. So, what exactly happened during the time he was unconscious? While Chi was alone in her room, a squirrel suddenly appeared in the blankets, scaring her half to death. Finally, it's just the two of us. A talking squirrel? Is it a monster? This squirrel then said, "I am the largest star you met by the lake last time." "Then why did you turn into a squirrel?" "Wasn't it because last time I only released a little light and you weakly fainted?" "Fainted, but fainted not because of the light, but because I used too much power." Hearing this reason, the squirrel showed understanding. Makes sense. For humans, using purification power is indeed very exhausting. These words coming out made Chi extremely astonished. You understand a lot about purification power? At this moment, the squirrel spoke up arrogantly. Of course, I am in existence even older than purification power itself. Listen carefully. First, this world is actually divided into two regions. One is the world built and developed by humans. The second is the realm of death, where forgotten stars sleep. The realm of death was originally ruled by 6 great stars, however. One day, a dispute occurred among the stars. Because of this dispute, 4 of the stars went to the human world and entered human bodies. But because human bodies cannot endure the power of stars, they were frequently tormented by pain. At that time, the 2 great stars remaining in the realm of death sent their power to the human world, creating an intermediate zone connecting the realm of death and the human world. That zone is the demon forest. The power of one great star happened to descend upon a person by the lake, and just like that, the first horn was born. But the 4 stars in the human world, because they could not adapt. Their power became extremely weak, and eventually they had to return to the realm of death and sink into sleep. Their power was then inherited through human bloodlines. But the horn is different. As soon as the previous generation dies, the purification power returns to its original form and searches for a new owner once again. As time goes by, the horn gradually becomes unable to bear the star's power and is tormented by pain. Therefore, the great star will guide the horn to the lakeside. Then sign a contract with another star. That way, they won't suffer painful side effects when purifying. The only way for the stars to leave the realm of death is to sign a contract. That is why they fought each other to sign a contract with you. But the problem is that during the rebirth process, signing contracts and using purification power repeatedly will consume the power of the Hogu star. As a result, that child eventually fell into a deep sleep. The horns born after the Hogu star fell asleep are not guided to the lake to sign contracts with the stars. Chi thought of her previous life. It turns out it was because she hadn't signed a contract with a star, yet used purification power, which is why it was so painful. Next, the squirrel said that the Hogue star was its only friend, so it didn't want its friend to continue sleeping. Originally, it intended to kill Chi so the purification power would return to the earth. But it realized Chi is now in her second life, and only the Hogu star has the ability to reverse time. It must investigate why the star, Hogu, while sleeping deeply, brought Chi back to the past. Therefore, O human, sign a contract with the greatest star. Signing the contract only benefits you. After all, I will make you stronger than anyone. Chi pushed the reason of becoming strong aside. Just thinking about how using her ability would no longer be painful in the future. She had no reason not to sign the contract. Chi Phython, one of the 6 great stars, right at this moment, signed a star contract with the horn. After successfully signing the contract, Chi carefully went to find the Duke. As soon as she appeared, she was discovered by him. Hello, child. Do you have something you want to ask of me? Looking at the little daughter acting timidly in front of him, the Duke felt as joyful as a festival in his heart. Could it be she wants me to read a fairy tale? After all, seeing Deian read a story to her before, the Duke was extremely envious. Under the Duke's look of intense expectation, Chi stated her purpose. I want to keep a squirrel. It's the squirrel on my head. It's very small and won't eat much food. Hearing this request, the Duke immediately slumped. It turns out she wasn't asking him to read a comic book, a false alarm, seeing the Duke's expression. She felt her request was too much. After all, she was only staying there and yet demanding to keep a pet. It really was too much. As a result, the Duke directly agreed, and once again affirmed, Chi is now my daughter. There's no need to be so cautious about such a small matter. Hearing that, Chi was extremely happy. The Duke was hit directly by this cuteness. A daughter is indeed extremely adorable. Having achieved her goal, Chi knew she couldn't bother the Duke anymore, and immediately excused herself. Actually, the Duke was still a bit reluctant to see her go. After the little girl left, he immediately fell into thought. Wants to keep a squirrel? Building a greenhouse should be enough, right? As for Deian, he welcomed a loathsome guest, Robin Half, who possesses freezing ability and is also the heir of Duke Hibsman. His purpose for coming this time was to mock the Rodri family for adopting a commoner as a daughter. As soon as Deian heard Robin Half mention Chick, he remembered that this morning Z had been bragging in front of him, that he was going to buy clothes with Chick. As for you, you're grounded and can't go stroll the streets with your sister. The rage inside him flared up as he tried to drive Robin Half away. Deian then said, I've already driven Chick away. Robin Half was startled. Didn't you declare you'd adopt her? Aren't you her older brother? Is it really okay for you to drive her away so bluntly like that? Deian only heard the words older brother and thought happily to himself, that's right, I am her older brother. No matter how much Z begs Chi, she certainly won't call Z brother. Deian thought of this and burst out laughing, which truly terrified Robin half sitting nearby. What's wrong with you? Deian immediately darkened his face. None of your business. Anyway, she's not here, so you should leave. In another development, after Chick finished changing into new clothes, an unexpected incident occurred. The shop owner who had just enthusiastically welcomed her had vanished. The identity of this shop owner was also a person of the Rodri house. After being granted a new name by the Duke, she used the clan's resources to open this clothing store. Therefore, her disappearance made Anna and Z extremely tense. What on earth was the reason she was kidnapped? At this time, the receptionist sneakily poked her head out. It's like this. The theme for our store this season is fur coats. Hearing that, both of them were speechless. Chick found it confusing. What did this have to do with the shop owner's disappearance? It's because the Sadia family's ability is beast transformation, and the animal they like to transform into most is the wolf. Learning this reason, Chi was also a bit lost for words. At this moment, the squirrel's voice suddenly appeared in Chi's head. Chi, I feel the breath of a star. It's one of the 4 sleeping stars. It's nearby. Let's go find it quickly. Hearing that, Chick asked back in her head, didn't you say they were in a deep sleep? Why are they outside now? And I'm right under Anna and Z's noses. How can I leave? The squirrel went crazy. Don't ask so much. I'll give you a bit of my power. Now you're like a small stone by the road, not eye-catching at all. Now even if you disappear immediately, they won't notice. Let's go find the great star. Okay. Granted the power, Chi took the squirrel and began searching. The squirrel now appeared extremely impatient. These 4 stars cannot wake up. No matter what, they have to find out. At this time, Chick seemed to have found the direction, but as she drew closer, the squirrel discovered this wasn't the star. Isn't this the scene where the shop owner was kidnapped? So can we help her? There was no other way. The squirrel had to compromise and laid out a plan. We can destroy this tire first. Take advantage of the chaos to rush in and snatch that woman back. So now I'll lend you some power. Try to imagine the scene of the tire exploding. Chick immediately imagined the tire exploding. Suddenly, a loud explosion rang out. Seeing such a terrifying explosion scene, the squirrel was stunned. No. What kind of thing did I sign a contract with? To be able to dominate my power and absorb even more than the power I gave. At this time, the people of the Sadia family, whose entire carriage was blown up, were searching for the culprit. This scared Chi to death. She clearly only wanted to blow up the tire, but this time it's a disaster. Is she about to be discovered? Suddenly a wave of cold air hit. Oh my god, what's happening? They were actually all frozen. It was the freezing ability user, Robin Half. Chi, from the corner, saw Robin Half slowly approaching, intending to freeze even the shop owner. No, that's someone I know. Please don't freeze her. Hearing that, the squirrel wanted to hit Chi. There's no need to beg him so humbly. You still have my power now. Handling him won't be a problem. At this time, Robin Half was completely dazed by the adorable little girl who suddenly appeared. Chi intended to speak nicely to Robin Half, but as a result, her foot slipped and she almost tumbled to the ground. Luckily, the Duke suddenly appeared and caught her. It turns out the Duke saw Chi had been out buying clothes for too long, so he went out to find her. And as a result, he met her here. The Duke also discovered Robin Half at this time. What's wrong, Robin Half? Aren't you going back with your father? Robin Half said, somewhat guiltily, that he heard the designer of Duke Roderick's house had seemingly been kidnapped, so he came to rescue her. Chi inwardly protested. Weren't you just about to freeze her? This look of tilting her head in thought directly made Robin Half blush. How could there be someone so adorable in the world? Until the Duke took Chick away. Robin Half still hadn't recovered. That night, Z reported to the Duke. Roderick about the conflict between the Beast Transformation clan and the shop owner. It's because although the Sadia family values the wolf symbol, they clearly weren't this extreme before. It's because recently, among the successor generation, the ability heir is not the eldest son but an illegitimate child from outside. So, turns out our Roderick family is so harmonious by comparison. The Duke's face darkened. Is that so? Is that why you let the lady get lost? Z felt extremely wronged. The lady must have a supreme hidden talent for stealth. Hearing this flattery, the Duke secretly agreed in his heart. Chi will definitely take first place at the Royal Academy later. The Duke truly dotes on his daughter. As for Deian, he received a strange letter from Robin Half. The content of the letter was extremely polite, asking if their fief had any bell towers. I hear the sound of bells every day now. Seeing the letter, Deian only found it nonsensical. Did this Robin Half take the wrong medicine? He casually tossed the letter aside. Speaking of which, I haven't visited Chai today. I should go ask if that kid was scared when she met that madman Robin Half last time. Suddenly, Chi appeared right in front of him, looking very adorable. But as soon as Chick saw Deian, she immediately covered her mouth, turned around, and ran away. What on earth is going on? At this moment, Chick was covering both her nose and mouth, sneakily looking out. Has Brother Deian left yet? As a result, she was caught on the spot. Seeing this, Chick panicked even more and kept trying to hide, but how could Deian give her the chance? In the end, why do you keep hiding from me? She had no choice but to carefully explain while still covering her nose. Before at the shop, Z told me that young Master Deian is very sensitive to smells because of his ability. Therefore, you find Chick very smelly. Hearing this reason, Deian was confused and immediately denied it. I never said you were smelly, Chi Ten said the first time they met. Deian had clearly told her to go take a bath quickly. Remembering that scene, Deian felt a bit embarrassed and had to explain softly. At that time, you were indeed too dirty. That's why I said that. So you don't have any smell? Deian also found it strange. Why doesn't she have any smell? As long as it's a living creature that breathes, it will emit its own unique scent. Although that smell isn't as disgusting as people think, it's just an extremely subtle fragrance. The reason Deian said he hated that smell was simply because he didn't want the maids, who always thought he was pitiful, to approach him. After all, since his mother passed away, everyone treated him like a fragile piece of glass, which he loathed, and he himself possessed special power, yet had no way to save his mother. This made it impossible for him to let go. He had intended never to open his heart to anyone again, but why when facing Chi? Did he not feel any rejection toward being near the little girl? If he could be by her side forever. Thinking of this, Deian reached out his finger and lightly flicked Chi's forehead. Anyway, from a moment ago until now, Chi had been staring at him with a silly expression, making him truly unable to hold back. When leaving, Deian also specifically emphasized that Chi didn't have any smell and told the little girl not to worry. Thinking back, having a younger sister isn't so bad. The next day, Chi began her etiquette lessons for this life. Her contracted star sat beside her with nothing to do, constantly instigating in her head, telling her to stop studying. After all, with its help, Chi could use purification power at will. Chick only needed to go public with her identity as a horn, and power and wealth would automatically come to her door. But Chick didn't think so. In her previous life, the Duke Goff that she met was an extremely selfish and extreme person. If her identity were exposed, it would be followed by countless struggles and conflicts. Suddenly, the door was opened slightly. It turned out to be Duke, Roderick, coming to visit his little adopted daughter while she studied, in Chi's eyes. At this moment, the around the Duke's body seemed to have become denser. She then asked Python in her head how much longer the Duke had to live. The answer received was only 2 years, so there is only that short time left. At this time, the Duke gently placed his hand on Chi's head, telling her not to force herself too hard in her studies. If she encountered any difficulties, just come find him. Hearing these words, Chi felt extremely warm. The Duke truly treated her like his own daughter. Therefore, she would also consider the Duke her father. She definitely had to save the Duke. Time passed until the next day. At this time, the Duke was discussing with Z whether or not to take Chi along to the hunting festival. After all, Chi was so intelligent and adorable. Suddenly a knock was heard. The person arriving was Chi, bringing the comic book the Duke had long awaited to ask him to read it. This made the Duke overjoyed, immediately driving Z out. This warm moment between father and daughter could not be disturbed by outsiders, and so it went. While the Duke focused on reading the comic to her, Chick purified a bit of as long as she continued to sneakily purify like this in the future. One day, the Duke's body would recover. Chick was so absorbed in the joy of her plan that she didn't even notice Deian's appearance. When Deian found out Chick went to find their father to read comics instead of him, he was very angry. Father is very busy. If you want someone to read comics, you can find me. Furthermore, since you like reading so much, I will take you to a place you will definitely like. She was very curious about this place and followed Deian. Before long, they arrived at the study room where there was a dedicated librarian. After instructing her to take good care of Chi, Deian went to his private reading room. This left Chi, who had been looking forward to reading together, feeling a bit disappointed. As expected, does her brother still not like her? Of course, that wasn't it. The librarian immediately explained that because Deian is the heir, he has many books on inheritance to read. As for Chi's task now, it was to choose a reading room of her own. This is a privilege of every member of the Roderick family. Right at this moment, Python suddenly spoke in Chick's head. Choose the third room. We sense a special power inside. Hearing that, Chick chose room number 3 without any hesitation. While Chick was still standing at the door saying goodbye to the librarian, Python could not wait, and rushed in to find the source of power attracting him. After seeing the librarian off, Chick discovered Python was rummaging for something under the table, causing the table to shake continuously. Finally, the mirror on the table fell. Luckily, Chi was quick and caught it, otherwise it almost shattered. Finally, Python touched a pearl-shaped object, but his claws slipped. The pearl quickly rolled away, going straight into a hole and getting stuck. This made Python absolutely furious. How could he be so unlucky? That pearl was none other than a star fragment, concentrated with the power of a star. What is a star fragment? Chick, carrying her curiosity, grabbed the mirror and ran toward Python. Star fragments are products fossilized from stars that have exhausted their life. Previously, many stars came to the human world out of curiosity, but they lost the power to maintain life and eventually turned into star fragments. But regardless of a star's power level, they still possess their inherent strength. So as long as someone has this fragment, they can use the star's ability. Right now, I feel the breath of this star. It must possess above average ability. At this moment, tempted by power, Python wanted to urge Chi to damage the door a bit to get the fragment out, but Chi did not agree. After all, if the door was damaged, the librarian would have to take responsibility. While they were talking back and forth, a third voice suddenly rang out, causing Chi to stop mid-sentence. Python, did you hear a sound just now? Suddenly, that voice rang out again, coming from the very mirror in Chi's hand. The mirror clearly showed the face of a boy. You can hear me, right? Facing the image that suddenly appeared in the mirror, Chi was so scared that she threw the mirror straight onto the ground. Thinking she had seen a ghost, she rushed outside. The boy in the mirror was equally bewildered. Just now, in the mirror, there indeed appeared a squirrel and a little girl only. It seemed because of his sudden appearance, he had scared them. He hoped he could meet them again. Time passed quickly, and finally the hunting festival arrived. To avoid Duke Goff, Chick lied, saying she suddenly had a cold, so for this hunting festival, only the Duke and his son participated. At the scene, Duke Roderick saw suspicious glances directed toward him. He understood that the decision not to bring Chick along was indeed correct. Everyone seemed very curious about his adopted daughter. At this time, Duke Hibsman came to exchange information with Duke Roderick. This time, it wasn't just the matter of Duke Roderick's household being the topic of gossip. While that Sadia family also didn't bring their second son, the one who inherited the beast transformation ability. I heard the eldest son's faction is actively dealing with this second son. There is also that strange Duke Goff, who didn't bring his son this time either. Clearly, several years ago it was confirmed his son inherited the clairvoyance ability, but for some reason, he has never let his son appear. Recently, he even heard a strange rumor. Duke Goff has been constantly using his clairvoyance ability to visit slave markets, seemingly searching for someone. Hearing this, Duke Roderick also felt astonished. After all, that man is famous for being a coward who clings to life. He rarely uses clairvoyance, yet this time, he uses it continuously just to find a person. Could it be he has news of a horn? Suddenly, a commotion caught their attention. It turned out Duke Goff was clutching Deian tightly and wouldn't let go. It was because he discovered the on Deian's body had completely disappeared, so he asserted firmly that their father and son were monopolizing a horn. Right at that moment, Duke Roderick also rushed over. 3 years ago, I warned you already. You are not allowed to go near my son. Being seized by Roderick, Duke Goff was shocked to find the around Roderick remained unchanged, so it turns out this kid Deian is the one monopolizing the horn. Finally, this noisy drama ended when the king appeared. Both of their families were disqualified from participating in this hunting festival because of this incident. On another side, Python suddenly fell ill. Only Chi knew this was a physical weakness phenomenon when stars stay in the human world for too long. It seems the only way is to take a trip to the demon forest. Python was finally able to return to the original lake. His body was immediately revived. Seeing Python full of life again, Chi was also very happy. But they couldn't stay here too long, lest they be discovered by Anna. Just as they were about to return, a rustling sound caught Chi's attention. It was a young beast transformation ability user. Around his body, the was very dense, and his leg was also severely injured. Should she save him? How to save him? Facing the injured little wolf, although Chi could remove the she could not treat the wound on his leg. So early that morning, Chick and Python acted out a play of accidentally finding an injured animal in front of Z. Although Z recognized at first glance that this little wolf was the second son of the Beast clan who had just awakened his ability. If Chick saved it, it might bring trouble. But under Chick's adorable attack, he could only silently pray for Duke Roderick, hoping the Duke could resolve this mess of trouble. A few days later, the injured little wolf was doing better thanks to the care of the doctor and Chick. Chick was still secretly happy that Z and the doctor hadn't discovered it was a beast person, but the Duke's sudden visit made Chi a bit worried about being found out, but the Duke only seemed to care about whether or not she wanted to keep a little dog. So he probably didn't discover the little wolf's true identity either. But in reality, Duke Roderick had long known the identity of this wolf. He just thought Chi didn't know, so he didn't expose it. And so, the two of them, in a situation where each thought the other didn't know, went together to see the gift the Duke had brought for her, walking behind the Duke. She became even more worried because she discovered the on the Duke's body had become heavier. Clearly, before this, thanks to her secret treatments, the had decreased quite a bit. Yet meeting him this time, why was it even more serious then? Before the treatment, Z appeared very worried about whether the Duke really intended to keep that wolf. Roderick was also a bit speechless. How could he actually keep the heir of the Beast Transformation clan? Now he just needed to find a good opportunity to send the little wolf back to its home. But Z was still worried the Beast clan would think they had kidnapped their heir. Roderick said that he was very happy right now. Anyway, the hunting festival was already gloomy. There was no need to worry too much about the little wolf. What Roderick was worried about now was Duke Goff. This Duke Goff seemed to have developed a great interest in Deian again. 3 years ago, he even kidnapped Deian under the lofty pretense of wanting to know the limits of an ability user. Every time he used those bright, sparkling eyes to stare at Deian, I don't know what he actually saw. Therefore, Duke Roderick instructed Z to dispatch more soldiers to protect Deian and Chick. If Duke Goff actually dared to do anything harmful to them, he would use his remaining time to drag Goff down with him. The next day, Chi visited the little wolf as usual. She even brought a lot of meat for him. Right at this moment, many people suddenly entered the room. It seemed someone was injured, but a certain breath among them made Python alert. Suddenly, the doctor and the people who brought the injured person all made excuses to leave. What happened? In Chi's head, Python's voice rang out. I sense it. The breath of the star I sensed at the clothing store last time. A blue-haired man pulled the curtain aside and looked at Chi. Horn, it's a pleasure to meet you. Chick thought, who is this blue-haired guy who suddenly appeared? How does he know Chick's true identity? In Chick's head now was only Python's voice, urging her to escape quickly. But this guy was blocking the door. How could she escape? The blue-haired guy didn't care about their thoughts and directly asked his question. Why do you only purify Deian? Is it because you haven't signed a contract with a star yet? Chick looked into his bright, sparkling eyes and suddenly remembered Duke. Goff also had eyes like that. Right then, the little wolf launched an attack, biting the blue-haired guy's hand, but was immediately flung to the ground by him. Then, Python also swung his fist and jumped up, landing a cute little punch on his forehead. Next, Python declared, Chick has already signed a star contract with me. Only then did the blue-haired guy notice Python. He then mocked Python. The one once known as the god of war is now in the form of an adorable squirrel like this? These words made Python's fur stand up. He immediately wanted to rush in and thrash the blue-haired guy. While they were fighting frantically, Python's inner voice also reached her, urging Chi to find a chance to run away. With his current power, it wasn't enough to withstand this blue-haired guy. But Chick saw tiny Python standing in front of her trying to stall for time. She didn't want to abandon Python. Finally, when Python was exhausted and waiting for the blue-haired guy's finishing blow, Chick directly knocked him far away. This scene left the little squirrel stunned. Since when did his contract partner become so powerful? Chick ignored the dazed Python and directly grabbed him and the little wolf to run outside. But just then, the blue-haired guy chased after them. As they were about to be caught, a sudden attack arrived. Finally arrived in time. Seeing this situation, the blue-haired guy knew there was no more chance today, and the star power left his body. In another place, Duke Goff was in a towering rage at the star that had just returned. What? You're saying Roderick's adopted daughter is a horn? How can that be? The star replied. This matter has nothing to do with me. In short, someone unexpected has appeared. It seemed the star was somewhat afraid of Python, so it instructed Goff, manage yourself during this time. Hearing this, Goff screamed in fury. He hadn't finished asking, the future I saw with my ability, the future of finding the horn at the slave market, when on Earth will it come true? The star replied, that, huh? It almost came true. What do you mean, almost, oi. But by now, the star was no longer glowing. It had disappeared. The star's sudden disconnection made Goff explode immediately. In his helpless rage, he could only scream in the room, shouting and demanding to kill them all. This scene terrified the boy standing outside the door, and isn't this boy the very child who appeared in the mirror before? He looked at the man in a frenzy and knew he couldn't appear before him now. Therefore, he prepared to leave sneakily, but was discovered by Duke Goff. The boy discovered eavesdropping was actually Duke Goff's son, Ian. Despite being Goff's son, he was not treated well. After being beaten by his father, he was also locked in his late mother's room. Suffering from hunger and cold, he could only feel his mother's love. In dreams, but when waking up, only the hard floor and cold air remain. At this moment, a boundless loneliness envelops him. On another side, Python tells Chick about the star they met today. It turns out its name is Hikena, and its power is control. It also always uses that power to toy with many humans. Therefore, that blue-haired guy is actually not at fault, yet he is now locked in a dungeon. But now is not the time to worry about the blue-haired guy. Anyway, Hikena has targeted Chick, and it must want to sign a contract with Chick. Because its control time is very short, while Python guesses that its body must still be in the realm of death, so if it signs a contract with Chai, it can escape from the realm of death. Chi doesn't understand why so many stars want to escape from the realm of death. Naturally, it's because the realm of death is called that, because it's full of deathly aura, completely opposite to the intense vitality of the human world. Previously, Hikena and 3 other stars joined forces wanting to break the boundary between the realm of death and the human world, but once the human world and the realm of death merge, mankind will live in misery. That is why Python had to join forces with the Hogu star to stabilize this boundary, but those 4 stars escaped to the human world, due to the restriction of heavenly laws. Their power in the human world gradually weakened, so out of necessity, their bodies had to return to the realm of death to sleep. Hikena certainly still wants to escape the realm of death, which is why it targeted her. Python wants Chick to escape quickly, but Chick doesn't want to run away, because in her previous life, whenever she escaped, Duke Goff would use the maid closest to her as a threat. She doesn't want her family in this life to be hurt. Therefore, she prepares to face the danger directly. Before facing the enemy, Chi needs to improve her strength. So the 2 of them return to the study room. There is still a star fragment here that can enhance power. After getting the librarian's permission, Chick damaged the floor a little. Finally getting the star fragment out, it is a white fragment, which means it contains the power of healing or restoration. Under Python's expectant gaze, Chick absorbs the star, but nothing happens in the surroundings. Suddenly, Python thinks of the mirror that fell and shattered earlier. Sure enough, the mirror has been restored, so this time the power received is restoration. Chick looks at the mirror, as good as new, and finds it truly miraculous. However, last time a boy appeared in the mirror, but this time he didn't. At this moment, Deian rushes over from outside the door and pulls Chi's hand, forcing her to run away. It turns out Deian pulling Chi to run was just to hide from the freezing ability heir Robin because he had long discovered Robin has unusual intentions toward Chi. Learning this reason, Chick says that Deian is overthinking. Now Chick must quickly go find her little wolf because it suddenly disappeared elsewhere. Robin leads his younger brothers and sisters to the grass in Deian's manor. Right now, he is still reminiscing about the first time he met Chi, his heart racing. Suddenly, his younger siblings seem to find something. He approaches to look. It turns out to be the beast transformation ability heir, Richard. The 2 of them clearly know each other. At this time, Chi also comes running while holding her skirt. Seeing Chi's hurried appearance, the little wolf immediately runs into her arms. Seeing this scene, it goes without saying how jealous Robin is of Richard, and that damn heart beats even faster. At this moment, facing Chick, Robin becomes hesitant and unable to speak. As for Chick, after finding the little wolf, she says words of thanks and then takes him back to the room. On the way back, Python finally reunites with Chick. Python tells Chi that after he left, the boy from last time appeared in the mirror again, a boy with golden eyes. This makes Chi think of someone, the heir of Duke Goff who has never appeared, Ian. And this Ian is also a very pitiful boy, currently still locked in the room full of his mother's relics. It is in this frighteningly quiet room that he discovered the mirror. He is truly too lonely. So much so that when he saw Python suddenly appear, he wasn't afraid at all. He even wanted to befriend him, but Python, that stubborn thing, only looked at the boy for a moment and then ran off to find Chick. Chick then said that next time she must definitely have a proper conversation with the boy in the mirror. At this time, Python also raised his doubts about the little wolf Richard. It was the witness who saw the blue-haired guy attack them that day, so it certainly knows Chi's true identity as well. Will it go and report her? Mentioning this, Chi wasn't sure either. She turned to ask, "Hey, little wolf, since you already happened to find out my identity, could you please not tell anyone?" Richard understood and immediately ran off when he reappeared. He had transformed into human form, wrapped a white cloth around himself, and solemnly promised Chi that he would absolutely not reveal the secret. Hearing that, Chick was extremely happy, only wondering where that white cloth came from. Turns out it was from the curtain nearby. Right at this moment, Chick sensed the star named Hikena appear again. It had actually entered the body of the blue-haired guy in prison. Chick and Python immediately went to the prison. Hikena, inside the blue-haired guy's body, was also very surprised to see the horn run to meet him as soon as he woke up. "So you also want to sign a contract with me, right?" This statement directly angered Python. "I told you Chi already signed a contract with me long ago." Only now did Hikena turn his gaze to Python, mocking, "I really want everyone to see the legendary god of war now looking so adorable like this." Before his words even faded, his hand suddenly reached toward Chi. Python, to protect her, immediately attacked, but he fell right into his trap. Hikena used star power to seize Python. Giving him no chance to resist, he immediately withdrew his consciousness, causing Python to fall into a coma. Every movement happened so seamlessly that Chi couldn't react in time. Hikena threw the unconscious squirrel back to Chi, because the most important thing, Python's consciousness, was now firmly in his hand. He directly placed Python's consciousness into a special vial, then swallowed it. The series of maneuvers showed he had prepared in advance. Only now did Hikena leisurely state 3 conditions. First, he wanted to get out of prison immediately. Second, save the son of Duke Goff Ian. Third, and most importantly, Chick must enter the Royal Academy. As long as Chick fulfills them all, he will return Python's consciousness and promise never to appear again. Leaving the prison, Chick carried Python while racked her brain for a way to save the blue-haired guy when the Duke happened to arrive. Chick immediately rushed into her father's arms, inventing a reason to release the blue-haired guy. The first condition was successful, but in her father's arms, Chick sensed an extremely dense flow of Python was unconscious. If she forced a purification, she would have to endure extreme pain herself, so she hesitated a bit. Regarding the second condition to save Ian, Chi remembered the golden-eyed boy in the mirror. The task now was to talk to Ian to find a way to save him. As she was wondering how to activate the mirror, Ian's voice rang out, "Don't be afraid, I'm not a ghost. And please don't run away." From Ian's perspective inside the mirror, it was just a row of bookshelves. Because Chi didn't want Ian to see her, since he also has clairvoyance and could see that she is a horn, which is what Chick wanted to hide for Ian. Just hearing a voice and having someone to talk to was enough to be content, because no one around him wanted him to live. Hearing that, Chick remembered her previous life. Duke Goff once said he had personally killed his son to monopolize her. She realized Ian was also a pitiful person. She then encouraged him that as long as one lives, there is hope. While they were talking, a servant came to call Ian to take his medicine. The conversation ended hastily, but she already had a clue. Every day, Ian has to take a type of medicine that makes him drowsy. This is very suspicious. At dinner, while the family of 3 was eating happily, the Duke suddenly coughed, profusely, even coughing up blood. His life was nearly exhausted. Witnessing that scene, she decided she would go find the Duke to read comics tonight. The Duke was very happy. He knew he didn't have much time left, so he cherished every moment with his little daughter. After reading for a while, Chi fell fast asleep. Fearing that carrying her back would wake her up, the Duke decided to let her sleep there with him. Late at night, Chi slightly opened her eyes, confirming her father was sound asleep. She then began the purification. Without Python's assistance, her power was weakened. The treatment process was not only painful, but the effectiveness was also reduced. To purify him thoroughly, Chick had to take out the star fragment she had collected earlier. Thanks to the power of the fragment, the on the Duke's body was finally completely removed, but the price Chick had to pay was most severe. The next morning, the Duke woke up feeling lighter than ever before, but he couldn't find Chick anywhere. Just then, Z rushed in to report the news. Chick had fainted right in front of her room door. The doctor was also helpless. The moment he saw Chick, the Duke remembered everything. Duke Goff searching for a special child at the slave market, him questioning Deian at the hunting festival, he realized Goff was looking for the horn, which is Chick. She was clearly so afraid of pain, yet for the sake of saving me and Deian, she decided to sacrifice herself. Having understood everything, the Duke issued a death order. At any cost, they must save Chi. During the days Chi was unconscious, the Duke posted notices everywhere to recruit doctors, attracting all kinds of people, including those who brought children wanting to replace Chi, but the Duke intended to ignore this. If possible, he was willing to trade his own life for Chi because she had done the same for him. At this time, a guard reported that a small red wolf had appeared at the gate. It was Richard. Looking at his tattered state, one could see he had crossed the demon forest to get here. Z was worried this would again involve the disputes of the Beast Transformation clan. Because Richard was now the heir, it turns out the head of that house had let his two sons duel. Despite being beaten bloodily, Richard did not surrender and finally became the legitimate heir. The Duke allowed Richard in, because he came as Chick's little wolf, and he hoped his appearance could help Chick wake up. Richard and Deian went to visit Chick, but no miracle happened. The Duke sat beside his daughter, his heart aching as if cut by sand, silently praying for her to wake up. Suddenly, he felt Chick's hand move. Finally, Chick woke up. As for Ian, he was worried because his friend in the mirror hadn't appeared for days. Then Chick's voice rang out. She retold the situation and proposed that she and Ian go to the Imperial Academy to study. Only in this way could Ian be saved, fulfilling Hikenka's second condition. Ian was very happy, but worried his father would not agree. Not long after, she met Richard again, but he had grown much taller and more muscular. Deian, standing nearby, teased that it was because Richard ate too much and was about to turn into a bear. Richard said nothing, quietly bit Deian's sleeve and pulled him down into the pond. The two were soaked like drowned rats, and Chick burst out laughing. Seeing that, both of them had a mischievous idea. They pulled Chick in too, and the three of them played all afternoon. Returning home covered in mud, the Duke felt happy seeing that scene. He only told them to be careful, but she discovered that the had begun to reappear on her father and also on Deian. She realized that if she risked purification now, the tragedy would repeat itself. The most urgent task was to save Python. Thinking so, Chi did not hesitate and directly asked the Duke to let her go to the Royal Academy. The admission ceremony finally arrived. Chi's appearance immediately became the center of attention. The crowd whispered about her commoner status. Duke Roderick needed only a glance to silence them. And the close knight protecting. Chick at the school was none other than the blue-haired guy. This left Z and Anna extremely dissatisfied. While Chick was attending the opening ceremony, Duke Roderick found Ian. He didn't understand why Goff forced Ian to wear a specially made necklace that blocked his clairvoyance ability from manifesting and could only be removed with a spell. Naturally, it was because Goff was afraid Ian would find the horn before he did. As for Chi, as soon as she finished the ceremony, she saw her brother, Deian and Robin Half, coming to pick her up. Chick immediately suspected Deian was skipping class. Robin Half pushed Deian aside and introduced himself as a member of the student council, adding that Deian was definitely skipping. Chick had to politely praise Robin Half a few times, making his face turn bright red. Deian crowded forward, demanding to take Chick to class, but she flatly refused him on the grounds that tuition was very expensive and money couldn't be wasted, leaving both of them petrified. Sitting in class, Chick felt a bit out of place, but her attention was quickly caught when the head of the grade went on patrol looking for students skipping class. Her eyes immediately locked onto something behind Chick. A turtle statue? No. It moved and then glowed. A flash of light appeared. It was Richard. Richard could only turn into a little wolf before. How is he so powerful now? This sowed the seed of wanting to become strong in Chick's heart. Richard was naturally taken away, but Chick was also called by name. She thought it was because of Richard, but it turned out not to be. The real reason she had to follow the head of the grade to the principal's office was only revealed once she was there. The principal handed her a test slip, recording a magic compatibility of 98%. Shai innocently asked, "Is 98% a very good number?" This question left the teacher speechless. This number cannot be bought even with money. Ordinary people only have 5%. Magic users try their best but only reach 30%. Even ability users are only around 50%. Chick is the person with the highest index ever. This number is good enough to mock the Uduk Academy, which always considers them perpetual second placers. The principal got so excited he slipped up, then quickly coughed to hide it before immediately stating his purpose. He wanted Chi to transfer from the general class to the magic class. The accompanying condition was granting Chi a full 8-year scholarship. Hearing the word scholarship, Chi had a moment where she wanted to agree immediately, but she still suppressed that thought, feeling that she needed to consider it more carefully. When alone, Chick recalled what Python had once said. The power of stars in the human world is magic. Horns are the most special creations made by the star, Hogu in this world, the fact that she has magic compatibility. As high as 98% is precisely because she is a horn. So if she goes to the magic class, will this identity be easily exposed? But then she thought of her father and brother. Although they looked healthy, the in their bodies was still increasing every day. Furthermore, she wanted to help Ian and Richard. If she went to the magic class, could she find a purification method without using star power? Not to mention the full 8-year scholarship. Thinking of this, Chi, who was wide-eyed at the thought of money, couldn't help but be moved again. Just as she was deep in thought, the noisy sounds of conversation in front of her pulled her back to reality. It was the blue-haired knight and a noble young lady. It seemed this young lady had fallen, and the blue-haired guy was trying to help her up. The scene was originally very harmonious until a group of hateful people appeared. Seeing this, they immediately slandered Chick's knight, claiming he had pushed the young lady down. They knew Chi was only a commoner lady, and thought bullying her would be easy, so they loudly demanded the blue-haired guy kneel and apologize. No matter how that noble young lady tried to explain, they wouldn't listen, even pulling her aside. Clearly, they were determined to humiliate Chi today. All of Chi's explanations in their eyes were just a joke. Right at this moment, someone stepped out from the crowd. He had characteristic golden eyes, which made everyone immediately recognize his identity. That person was Ian. He spoke up, saying he could use his ability to see whether this knight was actually lying or not. The people who knew well they were lying saw Ian publicly wanting to uphold justice and didn't dare act up anymore, quickly dispersing. As soon as she saw Ian appear, Chi immediately hid behind the blue-haired knight. She was also afraid her identity would be exposed. However, seeing that the on Ian's body wasn't much, she knew his health was very good and was secretly happy for her friend in the mirror. Even so, today was not yet the right time to officially meet, so Chi used the excuse of being shy to hide behind the blue-haired knight's back. She sent her thanks to Ian for intervening in time. On this side, the guy from before was still angry because he hadn't been able to bully Chi. His original plan was to plant a psychological shadow in her heart, so that after graduation, he could conveniently trample on the Duke's estate. But he was truly daydreaming. Just as he said those words, Deian walked by and heard everything. "So, you guys want to bully my younger sister?" The two of them trembled all over, completely unexpected to run into this god of death, but it was too late for regrets. But on the other side, the blue-haired guy started teasing Chi, suggesting she hid behind him because she liked Ian. Hearing that teasing, Chi was simply speechless. However, she still asked him not to report today's incident to the Duke. Blue Hair agreed he could hide this great first love, but the matter of those kids wanting to bully the young lady must definitely be reported to the Duke. Chi didn't want to make the Duke overly worried, but this matter was completely non-negotiable. That night, while Chi was sleeping, she was woken up by Python's voice. She hurried to open the box containing Python, but saw him still fast asleep. Could she have misheard? A sudden sadness rose in Chi's heart. She realized she missed Python more than she thought. Today was the night of the full moon, Python's favorite thing. So she placed him on the windowsill so he could bathe in the moonlight. Right then, she saw Ian leaving the academy. She didn't know where he intended to go. Before she could think clearly, Blue Hair's voice rang out behind her. Looking at his manner, it was obvious he was possessed by Hikena again. Hikena finally appearing made Chi. No longer in the mood to notice Ian's strange behavior, she immediately rushed forward and demanded that he quickly revive Python since she had completed the 3 conditions, but Hikena did not think so. The second condition, saving Ian, she still had not accomplished. She asserted that she had taken Ian away from that dangerous father, but Hikena said the peril had not yet ended. Because tonight, Ian would lose his life. At this moment, Ian had a brief second of clarity. He watched his body walking without control, not knowing where the destination was. That familiar feeling of losing control made him wonder, if it continues like this, will I die? If I die, it's no big deal, but he still had one regret. He hadn't met his friend in the mirror yet. That mirror had been shattered by his cruel father before he came to the academy. Inside it was hidden a stone split in half. The other half was clearly with the friend he had never met. He would absolutely never tell his father this secret. That father even forced him to drink all the medicine at once. So, the loss of control over his power tonight was definitely due to the medicine. His father wanted him dead, and Ian himself understood that. He originally didn't want to resist, but thinking about not being able to meet that friend before dying, he still felt regret. Carrying that regret, Ian's body plunged into the lake uncontrollably, while Chick and Hikena were still running at full speed. Hikena suddenly stopped and said the time had come, leaving Chai not yet understanding what was happening before Blue Hair returned. Hikena had departed, but now was not the time to worry about that. Ian's life was in danger. They had to find him immediately. Chi didn't have time to explain. She turned and continued running. Blue Hair was about to ask, but Chi only begged him to quickly help find Ian. Don't ask for the reason. Seeing her serious expression, Blue Hair understood this matter was extremely important, so he immediately cooperated in the search. Right then, they heard the sound of a large splash from the lake. The two immediately ran there and saw in the middle of the lake black gas rising up. Ian was sinking in it. Chi called out to Blue Hair and was about to dive into the water. But Blue Hair was faster, immediately jumping in and quickly pulling Ian to shore. But after checking, he discovered Ian no longer had a heartbeat. While Blue Hair performed CPR, Chick realized the black gas was surrounding Ian's weak heart, causing it to stop beating. She took the opportunity to purify the black gas. Finally, Ian's heart beat again. His consciousness recovered a little. He vaguely saw Chick and then fainted. But that was enough to confirm he had come back to life. Blue Hair carried Ian back while wondering in his heart how Chi knew Ian was there. Could it be she was always silently watching Ian? Surely the young lady has fallen in love, if the Duke's estate knew about this, there would definitely be an uproar, but Chi at this moment had no time to think about such things. Forcing the purification for Ian had caused her body to have a reaction. But as long as she could save Ian from the hands of the god of death, she was very happy. After bringing Ian to Robin Half's room, Blue Hair was scolded for daring to bring a fainted person into his room. But when he explained that he didn't know where Ian's room was, and was afraid of waking up his own young master because he was too fierce, Robin Half was so angry he felt like exploding. However, hearing Blue Hair say Chi also witnessed him saving Ian, and that this was a good opportunity to win her favor, Robin Half immediately blushed and agreed to keep Ian there. That night, in a dream, the voice in the mirror kept calling for Ian to wake up, not letting him die. Ian woke up with a start and discovered this was not his room. His clothes had also been changed. The matter of falling into the lake and being saved by the friend in the mirror was real. He was indeed at the Royal Academy. The next morning, Ian went to find Duke Roderick and told him the entire story about his father, hoping for help. After listening, the Duke felt some sympathy and immediately agreed to provide support. Ian was extremely astonished, not expecting more kindness from a stranger than from his own father. On Chi's side, she agreed to transfer to the magic department, making the principal joyfully urge her to start class immediately. On her way, she met Robin Half and Richard. The two came to invite her to join their newly formed club. Due to Deian's reputation as a killer, no club dared to accept them, so they formed their own group. But they were still short one person. When entering the class, Chi heard students gossiping about her extremely high magic harmony level with great envy, making it difficult for her to make friends. By the time school ended, Richard again led Ian to stand before Chi, making her panic. The moment she opened her mouth, Ian would be able to recognize she was the person in the mirror. She worried that if exposed, everyone would later discover she was a horn. Then what should she do? Right at that moment, Deian appeared. Seeing Chick's uncomfortable expression, he switched to protective brother mode, asking if those guys were bullying her. Everyone was immediately bewildered. How could they bully Chick? They were just introducing Ian. Deian looked suspiciously at Chick, who was nodding frantically, and decided not to press further. At this moment, Chick only wanted to leave quickly. She lightly tugged Deian's sleeve and whispered that she was hungry and wanted to go first. Even such a small matter had to be said as a secret, but with Deian's nature of doting on his sister, he asked nothing more and immediately pulled Chick away from there, leaving the three bewildered people behind. Precisely at that moment, Robin Half noticed Ian was shining brightly. At the same time, he realized Chick's abnormality started when Ian appeared. He immediately became determined to absolutely not let the two have any chance to develop feelings. Therefore, he planned to preemptively use the matter of Ian fainting last time to show off an intimate relationship, contacting Chi even in the middle of the night. But as soon as Robin Half mentioned the matter of him fainting, Ian urgently asked who had saved him. Only then did Robin Half realize Ian completely didn't know the person who saved him was Chi, so hadn't he just had a slip of the tongue? Seeing Ian becoming more and more impatient, Robin Half immediately realized how important the life-saving benefactor was to Ian, so he quickly played dumb, absolutely not letting Ian know that person was Chi. Just then, Richard stepped over. Robin Half immediately changed the subject, asking Richard to go submit the club formation application, leaving Ian standing nearby feeling even more slighted. Clearly knowing Robin Half did it on purpose, but unable to do anything. After returning and having snacks, Deian asked if it was because of Ian that she left in a hurry, and if she needed him to help Ian. Chick only felt a headache because everyone wanted to bully Ian while he was already so pitiful. She then begged Deian not to target Ian. She also asked him to tell everyone that she had a cold and temporarily couldn't speak. Deian couldn't withstand her adorable appearance and had to agree. Not long after, Robin Half's group came to visit. Chick immediately signaled for Deian to explain the reason she couldn't speak. Having no other choice, Deian complied. Everyone was surprised. Richard even transformed into a puppy to comfort her. While Ian stood nearby, quietly sad, Chick immediately noticed and gave him a piece of cake to comfort him. Although they couldn't recognize each other yet, Chick could still perform acts of care. Ian was not in the mood to eat, but still politely said thanks. Right then, a gust of wind blew by, carrying dust that made Ian's eyes sting. In a blurred moment, Chick's silhouette matched the silvery image in his memory of saving his life. Could the person who saved him really be Chick? But before he could ask, Robin half cut in and announced the meeting was over. Deian also immediately took Chick away. Ian didn't even have time to say anything. Only hearing Robin half whisper that, after the club was formed, he could withdraw if he wanted, but Ian just looked at Chick's back and spoke firmly. "I will not leave." Those words made Robin half furious, feeling that this secret could not be hidden much longer. Chick returned to the girls' dormitory and saw the girl who fell last time crying because of a knee injury. Blue Hair originally didn't want to help, fearing trouble like last time, but he couldn't withstand his young lady's kindness. Chick approached and discovered the girl had a scraped knee. It just so happened that the star fragment in Chick's hand had healing capabilities, so this small wound was a simple matter for her. The girl was extremely astonished. Is this the power of a 98% magic harmony index? So powerful. She immediately thanked her and apologized for the incident last time. She didn't mind. Seeing someone in difficulty whom she could help, she was ready to do so. Hearing that, the girl was beyond moved. She also said she discovered Ian often sleepwalked and had seen him secretly crying many times, feeling he was very pitiful, so she hoped she could help him. Hearing that, she felt uneasy. That night, Ian lay tossing and turning, afraid he would sleepwalk again. The help from the Duke had not yet shown any progress. Chick couldn't sleep either. He went to the lake again, remembering the silvery figure that saved him looked very much like Chick. Just then, Chick's voice rang out behind him, telling him not to jump. Blue Hair immediately rushed forward and pinned him to the ground. But in that moment, Ian completely confirmed that his friend in the mirror was Chi. When her identity was exposed, she hurriedly sat down next to Ian, her heart beating fast, not knowing how to start speaking. But Ian proactively broke that silence with 4 words. "I'm still alive." Just those 4 simple words showed. Ian already knew Chi's true identity clearly, and Chi no longer needed to hide. Accepting everything with relief, she began her first official conversation with Ian. It turned out the reason Ian was still wandering outside so late was because he was afraid of falling asleep and sleepwalking again. But staying awake forever was not good at all. So Chi told Blue Hair to call her brother Deian to help. At this moment, Deian appeared with an extremely annoyed face because he was woken up. His wake-up temper was incredibly bad. If Blue Hair hadn't said immediately that Chi called him, then perhaps the one getting beaten would have been him. The arrogant young master snappishly asked Chi what she wanted from him. And of course, the purpose was for him to go and sleep with Ian. Hearing that absurd request, Deian immediately refused and turned to walk away. However, after taking only a few steps, he heard Chi say that if he didn't agree, then Ian would sleep with her. Those words made Deian turn back immediately, his killing intent soaring to the sky. He dragged Ian away right in front of the two of them with an extremely annoyed expression. Once out of Chi's sight, he glared fiercely at Ian, warning him not to touch his younger sister, but that threat had no effect at all. The next day, Chi finally began her first official magic lesson. Each student was given a magic stone, and today's lesson was to help derive a stream of water from that stone. After chanting the spell, a small stream of water flowed from her hand. That was the content they had to practice. Even though it was Chick's first time holding a magic stone, she was extremely confident. She imitated every step exactly as the teacher had done. But something unexpected happened. Instead of a small stream, the water from Chick's hand erupted violently like an explosion, incessantly pouring out and startling the whole class. The head of the grade immediately ordered Chi to reverse the chant, but because she was too nervous, she completely forgot the incantation. Having no other choice, she tried to block the water flow herself, but failed. The out-of-control magic caused the water to rise rapidly. Flooding up to her feet, Chick looked at that terrifying power. A sense of fear rose within the head of the grade. Right at this moment, Robin Half passed by and discovered the situation. Seeing Chick's panicked and helpless expression, he immediately stepped in to control the erupting magic source like a god appearing to save the day. But the danger had not yet ended. The head of the grade immediately sought out the principal, demanding the issuance of a regulation banning Chi from learning any type of magic, because her power was too dangerous, especially since she could not yet control it. However, the principal did not want to lose such a gifted person, so he decided to go with her to find Duke Goff, to ask him to use his clairvoyance ability to see if, in the future, Chi, growing up, would become a threat or not. At the same time, Duke Roderick finally came to find Ian. He had investigated the cause of Ian's sleepwalking. Legend has it that since ancient times, there has been a type of cursed artifact that causes the wearer, even in a conscious state, to still self-harm. Furthermore, it cannot be removed and also seals magic power. This immediately made Ian think of the item he was wearing around his neck. Could that be it? He became even more certain that his father wanted to kill him. His body trembled incessantly. Duke Roderick was also helpless. He could not remove that necklace. But he could give him a brooch, an artifact that had been slightly modified. It couldn't resolve the magic seal, but it could prevent Ian from sleepwalking. This was truly a great lifesaver for Ian. He sincerely thanked the Duke, who looked at the sensible teenager, and felt even more heartbroken. Why did a child like Ian have to suffer having such a perverted father? Ian then asked why the Duke helped him so much. These words made the Duke suddenly remember that Blue Hair had previously reported that Chi seemed to like him. The Duke at that moment felt as if he had been struck by lightning, but he could only silently protect the person his daughter cherished, even though thinking about it made him very angry. But he still tried to maintain a smile and said it was because Ian was his daughter's good friend, which was why he helped, seeing the Duke's clearly angry. Yet forced smile, Ian couldn't help but feel a bit scared. Having resolved the sleepwalking issue, Ian immediately sought out Chick to share the good news. Thanks to Duke Roderick finding the artifact brooch, he no longer had to worry about sleepwalking. Hearing the news, Chick immediately rushed to hug Ian, her heart overflowing with joy. And in Ian's heart, a silent promise was formed. He would protect Chick for the rest of his life. After returning to the room, Deian immediately noticed something unusual about Chick. "Did you just cry, kid?" She was startled by that gaze and hurriedly denied it, but the more she hid it, the more unhappy Deian became. "No, I didn't. Both your eyes are all red. Tell me who made you cry." She awkwardly sat down at the dining table. Her hands instinctively went behind her neck, her flustered appearance impossible to hide. If she said she cried because she just talked with Ian, she didn't dare imagine what would happen next. Finally, she could only say that she missed her father. That reason made Deian both frustrated and confused. "Is that the reason you cried? Are you stupid?" Seeing Chi puff out her cheeks in a pout, his voice gradually softened. "If you miss father, you just need to go home and see him. We can absolutely ask for permission to go back this weekend." Chi could not hide her surprise. First-year students were originally not allowed to go out, but Deian appeared certain. He told Chi that he would handle everything. In that voice, there was a clear sense of protection and comfort. Chi instinctively smiled. Whenever it was just the two of them, Deian always took care of her like a father would. In the afternoon, the sunset dyed the castle gold. Chi stood at the door, not forgetting to wave and thank him for bringing her back. Deian watched her figure gradually disappear, slowly walking on the familiar path. Crying until both eyes are red just because she misses father? That thought made his heart ache. It wasn't hard to understand since she had once been ready to sacrifice her life for her father. It turned out that 2 years ago, while preparing to go home for summer break, Deian had received dire news from a guard who came to report. Chick lay weakly on the bed, her breathing labored, behind the half-closed door. The maidservants whispered and gossiped, fearing that the little girl might not make it. Even the doctor could not find the cause. Those words made Deian tremble even more. He clenched his fists, and a terrifying thought echoed in his mind. Will Chick die just like Mother did back then? Deian's tears fell incessantly. He did not want to repeat that tragedy. He remembered a day in the past when Chi had once smiled gently and said she had almost died but didn't know why she survived, perhaps thanks to a prayer, returning to the present. Deian wiped his tears. That day he had used his ability to protect her, and strangely, he didn't feel any pain at all. He knew that Chi had done something. This time was the same. Deian bit his lip, his gaze determined. If something happened to Chi, he would not forgive himself. Deian bowed his head and prayed with all his heart, entrusting his only wish. Though the prayer years ago couldn't save his mother, this time he wanted to try once more. Please save Chi, save her one last time. The entire space seemed to go still, leaving only the unconscious girl and that sincere plea. Deian swore that if she survived, he would protect her for the rest of her life. Returning to reality, Chick was standing there, healthy and radiant, happily waving goodbye to him. Looking at that innocence, Deian flashed a gentle smile. The little girl was still alive, still right by his side. He didn't know if it was because God had heard his prayer or simply a miracle reserved for her. Deian looked up at the high sky, engraving his promise, silently determined to never let her put herself in danger ever again, because he is her older brother. The next day after class, the students left the classroom one by one. Ian and Richard stood waiting for Chi at the door, urging her to go to the clubroom. Chi was packing her school bag while surprised to hear that place mentioned. On the way, the three of them discussed the club Ian had mentioned. Rumor had it that the third-year students would be late today, so they decided to go first. The more Chi heard, the more she wondered why a group like them had their own activity room. Even Ian found it hard to believe. Only Richard knew the truth. He quietly looked out the window, hesitating in his heart about whether he should tell the truth or not. The image of Robbie and Av holding a student's hand and flashing a smile that sent chills down others' spines flickered. It was Robin Half who used not so honorable ways to threaten the student council president to seize that room. Thinking of that, Richard could only shake his head in weariness. Suddenly, Chick pointed forward. A door appeared with a sign reading Dessert Research Group. Chick excitedly ran over, eagerly grabbing the doorknob. Before she could even open it, the door burst open from the inside. Chi was stunned, her eyes wide open. In front of her was Duke Hibsman, looking elegant with long blue hair. His stern gaze swept over all three of them. Then he suddenly bowed his head and gave her a gentle smile. That moment left Chi completely dazed, no different from a lost deer amidst unexpected events. A moment later, the group sat at the table talking. Duke Hibsman leisurely sipped a cup of coffee, his appearance calm, but his eyes did not leave Chi's somewhat tense face. He observed her very carefully and then silently confirmed. Fortunately, Chi Crosswick seems to have no problems so far. The image from a moment ago suddenly appeared in his mind. At that time, the old principal had stopped him because he had something to say. "Can you contact Duke Goff? I want to ask him about a student's current issue." But it seems he isn't here. That question made him frown. "You know the girl, right? It's Chi Crosswick. She's an excellent student." Hibsman's face darkened the moment that name was uttered. The principal still didn't realize that change and continued talking about how some teachers thought the girl's power was too dangerous and wished to seek Duke Goff's opinion. The letter had just been pulled out and was about to be sent when Hibsman decisively snatched it. Without letting anyone react, he turned his back, put the envelope in his coat pocket, and declared he would handle it himself. Returning to the present, Hibsman's gaze darkened. In his mind, the vision of Deian being targeted by Duke Goff in the past suddenly appeared. A shady smile flickered on his lips. That man owed Roderick a debt that had yet to be paid. The silence was broken when Hibsman spoke. "I am glad that you seem to be doing well." After saying that, he stood up and left. Ian and Chick hurriedly stood up to see him off, their eyes following his tall and thin silhouette as it disappeared behind the door. Ian turned to Chick, surprised to realize that the purpose of Duke Hibsman's trip didn't seem to involve Robin Half. Right then, the door burst open and Robin Half rushed into the room in a panic, his eyes full of worry searching for Chick. He repeatedly asked about his father's appearance. Chi only smiled lightly and said that the Duke had come and gone. But in her heart, it suddenly sank. Thinking back, Duke Hibsman seemed to have accumulated too much, already. Chi turned to look at Robin Half talking with Deian, thinking to herself that he would surely be very sad if he knew something happened to his father. Chi was lost in a wandering stream of thoughts, hoping there would be some way to purify it. Suddenly, a finger flicked her forehead lightly, making her jump. "What strange things are you thinking about again, kid?" After speaking, Deian pulled out a small teddy bear and placed it in her hand, signaling her to stop thinking about nonsense. Chick was surprised to receive the gift, while Deian quickly turned away to hide his embarrassment behind the excuse that it was just a gift for joining the club. She instinctively smiled. Even though Deian complained all day, the fact that he actually cared still made her feel warm. She ran over and happily hugged his arm, thanking him in an affectionate voice. Deian's cheeks turned bright red, but he still tried to act cold, telling her to move away. At that exact moment, a sudden, intense pain pierced straight into his chest, as if something was squeezing his heart, making his breathing gradually become difficult. "Brother, is something wrong?" Deian suppressed the painful sensation to reassure her. "It's nothing." Even so, his eyes showed a flash of unease as he looked down at his chest. Elsewhere, a letter was slammed onto a table. Duke. Hibsman had brought the letter he just took to Duke Roderick. After just a glance, his face immediately darkened. A sense of danger rose in his heart if Chick's future was to be decided by Goff. Roderick gripped the letter until it was crumpled, gritting his teeth in anger. "I owe you a favor. Tell me about the letter." "I heard that the cause of this situation is a professor named Rumbo Ismetic. Someone famous for being rigid and unable to accept students who fall outside her standards. Perhaps because your daughter's affinity score is too good, that woman cannot be convinced. She will likely continue to pester her until the girl graduates. At this rate, she would rather have her tested by Duke Goff as the principal mentioned." Roderick stood up and decisively rejected that possibility. He tore the letter to pieces and then flung open the window. The shredded pieces of paper were swept away by the wind. Roderick's gaze was sharp and cold. Goff's vision is not something only he possesses. In another setting, a wooden tower had a few blocks pulled out, making it dangerously unstable. Chi, Deian, and Blue Hair sat around watching it intently as it tilted. Chick was told by Deian that she was terrible at playing. Chick stood up angrily, causing the wooden tower to collapse completely. Chick stared at the mess in front of her in a daze, then could only give an awkward laugh. She turned to Deian and excitedly suggested playing another round. But Deian had put his face down on the table at some point. Chick leaned down and worriedly called him, afraid that he was angry. But the response was only a terrifying silence. The prolonged silence left her bewildered as she lightly shook Deian, calling for her brother once more. Suddenly, her face turned pale. She whipped around to Blue Hair and said in fear, "Philip, brother is very strange." Deian was now clearly showing signs of pain, his breathing heavy and hurried. She rushed to his side, not understanding why everything had turned out like this in the blink of an eye. Brother doesn't need to use as much power as before, so his chest isn't swelling up, but why does he seem to be in so much pain? The gem in Chi's hand glowed faintly. She gripped it tightly, leaning down to bring the gem closer to Deian. Only one simple thought remained in her mind. Perhaps he just had a cold so she could help relieve his pain this way. But just as Chick was about to use her power, Deian suddenly bolted up and swiped Chick's hand away forcefully. This action left her stunned on the spot. Deian's face was pale as he spoke weakly. "Don't touch me, kid. Never." After speaking, Deian turned to leave. "Philip, contact the villa. I need to see father immediately." His steps suddenly faltered, then he turned his head. Both his gaze and voice carried a chilling warning emphasizing that she must absolutely not be allowed to touch him. Immediately after, Deian collapsed. Philip and Chi rushed over in a panic and the space fell into chaos as night descended upon the luxurious castle in silence. Dean lay still on the bed. His eyelids flickered slightly and then slowly opened. Dean sat up, tiredly rubbing his temples. Realizing he was in his private room, his gaze suddenly stopped. He saw Chick had fallen asleep by the bedside at some point. Deian looked at Chick silently. "This dummy. Did she follow me back here?" He recalled his cold words from earlier and remembered Chick's frightened eyes. Deian reached out to stroke her hair gently, blaming himself for being too cold. Perhaps he had hurt her more than he thought. At this moment, the door opened and Duke Rodri entered. He observed his son sitting on the bed and asked about his condition. "Occasionally you must use your power, but do not use it when you know little of the consequences." Deian lowered his eyes and replied, "I didn't know." Chick thought back to the chaotic scene from earlier. The Duke added more words. "Furthermore, Chick was very scared that something would happen to you. Even during all that time, she kept promising not to go near you." Why did she make such a promise? He sat down on the bed and looked directly at his son. "You told Chi not to touch your hand. Why did you say that?" Deian remained silent. In his head, a memory surfaced of Chi collapsing by his side, and how when he woke up, he hadn't felt any pain despite overusing his power. It was exactly that which made him not dare to accept having her near him. Just as he was about to speak, the Duke spoke first. "She is a special child, isn't she? Chi is truly special, so we must protect her." He turned his back, mentioning the letter he had sent earlier, requesting Deian to go to the villa with Underwhite when he had time. In order to prevent the Academy from seeking Duke Goff's opinion to evaluate the danger level of her power, he needed Underwhite's help. Rodri looked down at her, his gaze softening. He would not let anything happen to Chi. He turned to Deian, smiling gently and asking like an older brother, "You will protect this child, won't you?" Deian's gaze became determined. He gripped the blanket and replied in a firm voice that he would certainly do so. Early the next morning, Chi sat leaning by the window, her face tired and her spirits sluggish. She had barely been able to sleep. It turned out she had heard the entire conversation between the father and son last night. The fact that Professor Jumbo viewed her as a threat left her bewildered. If Duke Goff found out, her life could very likely become like her previous life, a prospect that terrified her. She knew she needed Python's help. Hikena had also said he would let her see him again, but in recent days, he hadn't appeared. This left her in despair. Python, when can we meet again?" Right at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. "Contractor Chick?" Startled, she jerked her head around. "Long time no see, contractor." This time, Python was no longer a tiny squirrel like before. He appeared with a confident look, raising his hand to wave in a flirtatious manner. Chi's mouth hung open, stunned to the point of being speechless. When she regained her senses, she grabbed him and pulled him close to see clearly, excitedly saying all at once, "Python, how did you appear? Why are you no longer a squirrel?" Python hurriedly interrupted. "Ask slowly, one by one, and this is my original form in the place where I was born." He chuckled and crossed his arms arrogantly. "This body is that of a god of war. The stars in the sky were once gods worshipped by humanity. But time spares no one, not even the gods. As human faith gradually faded, some gods were forgotten. They could no longer exist in the human world and were forced to return to their own graveyard, where power gradually vanished and they fell into eternal sleep. While eating, he lazily recounted that it had all been a very long time ago. Because nowadays, not many people believe in gods anymore. I'm not exactly returning to the graveyard, but I can't be like before either. But Chi didn't care. In her eyes, Python had always been very powerful. But in reality, at this moment, Python was still just a fictional creature. What Chi was seeing now was actually just an illusion. His escape from the glass jar had made his state of existence unstable, to the point where he could no longer even perceive the taste of food. So you still haven't found your body yet? Python lay on his back and confirmed, exactly. At this time, he also considered it a fitting revenge. The very person who once released him had unintentionally given him an opportunity. Mentioning that, Chick immediately made the connection to the day Ian fell into the water. That must have been the time Hikenka released Python. As Python showed off while confirming that guess, he had used his perception manipulation ability to deceive them, pretending to be sealed again while actually hiding inside the knight's body. Taking that chance, he had drained all the power that the other person had accumulated. That child with the golden color must have been exhausted to the point of falling into a deep sleep. Chi couldn't hide her excitement and clapped in approval. But immediately after, the emotions within her suddenly sank. Upon realizing she truly got to meet Python again, the joy rose so strongly that tears fell before she knew it. Python was flustered by that reaction. He turned his head shyly to comfort her. "You must have had a hard time lately. Stop crying and talk to me." Now Python reached out to pat her head to reassure her, this body will listen to everything. After hearing Chi's story, his blood boiled with anger. "What? You're saying someone is going to block your magic?" Python stomped his feet repeatedly in anger. How dare that person do that to the one who signed a contract with this body? But it's true that I cannot control magic power. Python, though annoyed, understood that the problem lay in the method of use. He pointed out that Chi was using human spells that were long-winded, repetitive, and unnecessary. Those things, according to him, were only for ordinary people, created to draw a tiny portion of power from the stars. Chi didn't need those things. As the contract holder, she could use power in a different way. A few days later, a meeting took place. The principal cleared his throat to present. Now, as Duke Roderick suggested, we will evaluate Chick's danger level through an assessment from Underwhite. Noticing Chick seemed tense, Ian, sitting opposite her, spoke softly to reassure her. This made her a bit shy, her face turning red, not knowing what to do. Ian turned to the side and spoke. "Shall we begin?" Having received agreement, he began to use his ability. His eyes widened, staring toward Chi for the next second. Ian pretended to lower his head as if thinking about something. Then he rubbed his eyes and announced, "I don't see any danger at all. There is no problem with Chi." Noticing Roderick's dangerous gaze, the principal broke into a sweat and waved his hands. "I understand, sir." Right at this moment, Professor Jumbo's hand slammed onto the table. "I do not agree." I have seen Duke Goff use his ability before. The golden eyes would glow. She pushed up her glasses to analyze. But just now, young Master Underwhite's eyes only changed color. They didn't glow at all. Did you actually use your power? This questioning made Ian freeze for a moment, while Duke Roderick spoke up to explain instead. Even those with similar powers might not exhibit that phenomenon. Despite that, the professor remained stubborn. "How can I trust that? Who knows if you used any tricks?" Suddenly, a voice interrupted. "Then I will prove it to the professor." Chi rummaged through her school bag and took something out. "What you are worried about is that I cannot control my magic, right? But recently I have practiced very hard." Seeing this, the professor and the principal hurried to remind her. They were afraid of facing a situation like before. But the Duke stood up to guarantee. He was extremely confident in Chi. Chi focused her mind, muttering a few brief words. Light gradually spread around her. No explosion occurred. The energy sphere in her hand slowly melted and dripped down into the jar placed underneath in a stable manner. Initially, it was only because the principal advised me to go to the magic department, but now I find magic very fascinating and interesting, so I have practiced very hard. With an innocent, guiltless face, Chi asked the principal and the professor, "In the future, I will try to work harder, so can you please allow me to continue my studies?" The principal embarrassedly agreed. "Well, of course, we have no reason to stop you anymore. The meeting regarding the blocking of Chi's magic ends here." Hearing that, Chi couldn't hide her joy and expressed her sincere gratitude. Ian, sitting on one side witnessing her entire radiance, was dazed for a long time. When he realized his own reaction, he was so embarrassed that his face turned red, and he had to cover it with his hand to hide the emotions rising in his heart. Outside the academy, the clear blue sky stretched wide. Chi rejoiced. "Thank you so much today, Ian." Ian only smiled modestly, even though in his heart he knew clearly that most of the preparation came from Duke Roderick, including the magic potion that could temporarily change eye color. Thinking about how he hadn't played his role as perfectly as expected, Ian felt a bit downcast, but Chick timely denied that, because to her, just him being there was already a great support. At that exact moment, Python lightly touched Chi's cheek, showing his dissatisfaction at being ignored. Python had returned to his small squirrel body. At this moment, he crossed his arms poodily. "That's because I removed all the unnecessary phrases in that magic incantation." Chick gently stroked the squirrel on her shoulder, whispering her thanks. That gesture accidentally caught Ian's eye, making him tilt his head in curiosity. Just then, a small squeak rang out from Ian's pocket. Something inside was constantly squirming. Richard appeared in the form of a hamster, startling the two of them. "Sister Chi, you must run now. Something is coming." His warning made Chi freeze. A sense of unease quickly spread through her body. At the same time, in the lecture hall, the lesson on ancient languages continued monotonously. Boredom was evident on many students' faces. Robin half yawned, while Deian rested his chin on his hand, his mind drifting away. "Is that kid angry? Since that day, she hasn't even come near me. When I told her not to touch me, I was so afraid she would get hurt. Perhaps we need to sit down and talk properly." That stream of thought was cut short by a blood-curdling scream. A female student tremblingly pointed out the window where a series of monsters of all kinds were swarming into the academy courtyard, letting out ear-splitting roars. Despite the professor's attempts to reassure them, panic still spread. Students crowded each other, seeking a way to escape amidst the chaos. Deian and Robin Half quickly took action. When a female student fell before a monster's claws, Deian's magic timely constricted that creature, while Robin Half created giant blocks of ice to block the rest. After the situation had temporarily stabilized, Robin Half couldn't help but be suspicious. Monsters originally have no intelligence, so how could they appear simultaneously at the academy? Connecting this with the fact that Duke Roderick was present today, a terrifying hypothesis gradually formed in their minds. Someone had intentionally arranged everything to force the Duke to take action and use his power. That thought was interrupted when a large figure glided past over their heads. It was a giant flamingo. On its back were Chi and Ian. It turned out that was Richard, who had transformed to take them to safety. Thanks to that camouflage, the monsters didn't attack them because they viewed Richard as one of their own. Chi quickly explained that the Duke was currently with the principal, and most of the students had been evacuated. And now they had to go to the shelter. Before they could leave, someone rushed over to report dire news. Robin Half's father was in danger in a locked room. He lay motionless on the bed, cold sweat pouring out, his body covered by flows of pitch-black magic power. The guard tremblingly recounted that he had tried to reach the academy to help, but was ambushed by monsters on the way. At that sight, Robin Half stood frozen. Python observed the black aura, recognizing an unusually high density of Chick understood that only purification could save that man, but doing so was not easy when there were still too many people around. She clenched her hands, her gaze gradually becoming determined. She had thought of a way, even though she knew the road ahead would be extremely dangerous. At this moment, monster carcasses still lay scattered in the Great Hall, the mixed scent of magic power not yet dissipated. Robin Half pushed the door open and stepped out, his face carrying a gentle smile but unable to hide his exhaustion. He stated his father wanted to send everyone home first, while he himself would return after the carriage arrived. Thinking about Duke Roderick being by his father's side, Robin Half felt a bit more at ease. Having an old friend nearby would surely make him less worried. Chick hesitantly called his name, but Robin Half only gently stroked her head, promised to see her again, and turned back inside. As soon as the door closed, Chick softly exchanged words with Python. The time had come. She asked him to cast manipulation magic on her. A pale yellow magic flow quickly enveloped her body, making her figure gradually become blurred, almost dissolving into the air. Chi silently sighed in relief, believing that in this state no one would be able to notice her presence. However, before the plan was complete, Deian suddenly grabbed her hand. The feeling of being pulled back startled Chi, her eyes widening in surprise. Deian frowned, realizing her body was becoming unusually faint. Even Python couldn't react in time. He didn't expect Deian would be able to sense those magic traces. Deian squeezed Chi's wrist, his eyes full of unease. "Don't ever do that in front of me again. I was startled when your breath suddenly disappeared." Chick was flustered. Perhaps she wouldn't be able to sneak in this way after all. Deian seemed to have guessed her thoughts, so he resolutely refused to allow it. He called Richard and Ian closer, deliberately pointing at the small squirrel perched on Chi to make it look like he was just showing off something completely normal. Ian and Richard were immediately curious and leaned in to look. Who would have thought Deian would flash a devious smile? He untied the red string fastened to his collar, and with a speed that left no one time to react, tied the hands of Chi, Ian, and Richard together. By the time the three regained their senses, their wrists had been tied tightly into one bunch. Chick hurriedly pleaded while Richard chimed in, but Deian leaned in close and lowered his voice to speak privately to Richard. "You have to help me. If we leave her alone, I'm afraid that kid will get sick like that time. She still doesn't feel well." Hearing this, Richard immediately switched sides to stand with Deian. Chick could only lament seeing them both turn their backs on her. Deian even aimed directly at Python, warning him not to untie her at any cost. Right then, a weary Robin Half stepped outside. Deian immediately approached to ask about the situation. Robin Half said he had rushed back to the villa, so there were many things not yet settled. Deian immediately offered to go along to assist in any way possible. Despite Chick protesting loudly, Deian only waved goodbye, telling her to be good and not cause any more trouble. When Deian left, Python grumbled while looking at the excessively tight knot, not understanding where he learned to tie a string like this. Chi whispered calculations in her head. The fact that Deian had left this place actually became an opportunity. She decided to change direction and try to persuade the others, starting with Richard, but before she could finish her sentence, he flatly refused. While Chi was still hesitating, Ian suddenly spoke up to help her. He skillfully used this as an excuse to suggest Chi go back to the dormitory to get a jacket, otherwise she would easily catch a cold. Richard began to waver and finally agreed to untie her. The idea of Chi getting sick was unacceptable. Taking that chance, Ian quickly untied his side, urging Chi to take advantage of the moment to leave and return quickly before Deian came back. Taking the opportunity, he leaned in close and whispered, "Whatever you do, I will support you fully." Those sweet words made her face turn pink. The moment she was free, Chi immediately ran off, promising to return soon. Once she was out of everyone's sight, Chi softly called Python. With just a flick of a finger, invisibility magic enveloped her again. Chi pressed herself against the wall, moving cautiously. On the other side, Ian intentionally pulled Richard in a different direction under the pretext of finding snacks, secretly creating conditions for Chi to act. As she pushed the door open to enter, she didn't forget to turn her head and silently send a thank you to Ian. On the large bed in the room, Robin Half's father still lay motionless, his breathing heavy. His eyebrows were knit tight in pain. Duke Rodri sat beside him, his tense expression unable to hide his anxiety. Chi quietly approached and stood right by the bed. She placed her hand on Hibsman's hand, closed her eyes, and began to summon the purification spell. In her heart, she was determined that this man would definitely not die. The pitch-black aura gradually dissipated. Hibsman's complexion visibly softened. When the magic was complete, Chick proactively stopped, not purifying him completely to avoid causing suspicion. She turned to leave, believing that at this rate, he would soon recover and wake up. The moment Chick left the room, Duke Rodri suddenly paused. It felt as if he had just sensed a familiar presence. Right then, Hibsman stirred slightly. His breathing became more regular. His complexion also improved significantly. The Duke looked at his old friend like that, and in his heart, he understood everything. Outside the room, Chick stood before the door and breathed a sigh of relief as the mission had been completed very successfully. However, that peace lasted only for an instant. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed in the long hallway. A figure rushed over, gripped Chi's shoulders tightly, and called her name loudly. She turned back in a daze, realizing it was Ian. Before Chi could even say thank you for the help earlier, she was cut off by him. Ian's face was pale with worry, his breath coming in gasps. "We have to run now. My father is here." That news left Chi stunned. Every thought in her head seemed to freeze. After Deian returned and saw the red strings discarded scattered on the floor, he crossed his arms with an unpleasant expression, immediately guessing the kids were no longer in their place. Right then, Richard walked up from somewhere, carrying a bag of bread that was still warm. He explained that Chick said she was cold, so she went back to the dormitory while Ian and he went to buy bread, but when they returned, Chick had disappeared without a trace. The explanation made Deian even angrier. He shouldn't have entrusted the job of watching Chi to them. Deian stepped into the room. He intended to report to his father that everything had been settled for Robin Half, but he suddenly froze. Duke Hibsman was awake, leaning his head on a pillow with a gentle smile. That sight left Deian stunned. As for Robin Half, he couldn't contain his emotions and rushed to hug his father like a child, tears glistening at the corners of his eyes. Hibsman gently reassured his son. That warm atmosphere was broken when an unfamiliar voice rang out from behind Deian. How incredible. Duke Goff appeared, his tone carrying a sense of sarcasm. I heard that you were about to die, didn't I? Upon seeing him, Duke Roderick immediately stood up and pulled Deian toward him. Goff showed no sign of caution, only giggling and saying that he came to verify a hunch. His gaze was terrifyingly sharp as it rested on Hibsman. It seems I have found the correct answer. I see the on your body has been completely purified. Those words left Hibsman astonished, while Goff stepped deeper into the room one step at a time. Don't you feel much lighter, Hibsman? It's all thanks to the horn. The only one capable of purifying Then he turned to Roderick. Now, tell me, Roderick. His voice carried a morbid tone. You've hidden a daughter carrying the blood of a horn from my eyes for 2 years. Now you can finally tell me the reason. Hibsman was stunned, unable to believe the words he just heard. He said Chick is a horn? Goff continued to press closer, exposing Roderick's fatal weakness. Even if you are called the Empire's assassin, you still soften when you have to watch your friend die, don't you? Furthermore, is the consequence when your child's identity as a horn is revealed. Goff kept on provoking. Perhaps it's true. There is no other reason for a duke like you to go and adopt a commoner. Finally, Roderick could no longer hold back. Magic flared up like invisible strings tightening around Goff's neck. Despite the pain, Goff still wore a morbid smile. It seems I guessed perfectly. But even so, you cannot kill me. You are also a duke. If you dare to kill another duke, you will receive the death penalty. That threat made Roderick's whole body tremble with rage. Goff continued to provoke. Surely you wouldn't want to leave the children so soon, would you? Right then, Hibsman grabbed Roderick's wrist, forcing him to stop. He calmly advised his friend not to act on emotion. Then Hibsman suddenly realized something more important and asked Roderick about Chick's whereabouts. Roderick's gaze lowered, looking distant and heavy. Behind them, the room door was still slightly ajar, and Richard had been standing there for some time, quietly hearing everything. Sunset descended, dyeing the academy sky red. In the quiet chapel, Ian and Chai were hiding behind a large table on the podium. She looked around warily, unable to help being surprised because she never knew there was a place like this in the academy. When Ian slumped down beside her, Chi began to wonder about the reason he took her into hiding, since she had never said she needed to avoid Duke Goff. Seeming to read her thoughts, Ian explained that he didn't want his father to see Chi because he was very dangerous and was searching for the horn. Those words left Chi in shock. It turned out Hikena had told him everything. Hearing that, Python immediately bristled. How do you know Hikena? Chick timely reassured Python, while simultaneously starting to suspect the person in front of her was not Ian. At that exact moment, a hint of a smile appeared in Ian's eyes. Chick instinctively backed away. Could it be that you are Hikena? Ian lowered his head and let out a meaningful laugh. He swept his hair back and gave a radiant yet dangerous smile. Hello, Horn. Are you happy to see me again? And Python immediately got angry, while Chick was beyond surprised, not understanding how Hikena could still control this body despite losing most of his power. Hikena only shrugged, looking disdainful. You underestimate me too much. I'm not like that squirrel. Those things can't stop me. Hearing the provocation, Python was about to blow a fuse when Hikena placed a finger on his mouth, ordering him to expand his detection abilities because others might be approaching. It turned out the 3 great stars had awakened at the same time as Hikena. But Tita was not among them because she had fallen into sleep much later. When the name Tita was mentioned, Chick suddenly understood that she was the one who created the horns. The mysterious white-haired woman who had once sent her back to the past. Hikena and Python quickly shifted to analyzing the situation. Python realized that the Great Star's awakening also meant Hikena had regained his power. The biggest question now was the reason they were heading toward the academy. Hikena slowly reached out his hand to lift Chi's chin, his gaze full of meaning. Because the thing those 3 great stars crave is right in front of them. Chi looked up doubtfully, a sense of unease rising in her heart for unknown reasons. That smile still didn't disappear. Hikena suddenly turned to leave, clearly intending to go outside. Chick immediately stopped him, her heart full of worry. She knew Duke Goff was outside and dared not gamble when Ian's life was still bound by a strange artifact. If they faced him directly, the consequences would be unpredictable. Hikena only lowered his eyes and gently lifted the pendant on his neck as if to confirm the artifact Chick was talking about. Immediately after, he snatched it down without hesitation. Chick was panicked. Her heart felt as if it had dropped to the bottom of an abyss. She immediately grabbed Hikena's collar, her eyes glistening with water, both angry and afraid. Forcibly removing the artifact could cause Ian to lose his life. Hikena casually brushed her hand away and told her to calm down. He held up the piece of the artifact and gave a thin smile, for he was the one who had given this item to Ian from the start. That truth left Chick stunned. Hikena did not hide his purpose. He needed to verify Underwhite's ability. If Underwhite discovered Chick's true identity, then Goff would also find out soon. Then he smiled apologetically, admitting that because of this, Underwhite had to suffer quite a bit. Star fragments used to seal abilities always cause side effects after all. But even so, everything had been arranged properly by him. The condition between the two sides was still in effect. To bring Python back, Ian must definitely live. Even through Rodri, Hikena had provided another star fragment to neutralize the side effects. To him, that was already a generous enough service, so stop complaining and let's go. Hikena held out his hand toward Chi with a radiant smile. We can't let those 3 great stars run wild freely, can we? Outside the luxurious castle, as the two walked, Hikena spoke of those beings' true goal, starting a war by possessing those with abilities. Their plan was to incite conflict between the ducal families, thereby creating a hero for humanity to worship and grant absolute power. Chick quietly reflected. She remembered the war in the past when she lived as a horn. The ones she saw back then were irrationally strong. War had worn her down, turning her into a tool for the stars to manipulate. Thinking of that, Chi's heart suddenly grew heavy. Hikena spoke up now. Tita wants to change that future. That is why Tita reversed time and made a deal with me, promising to give me what I crave if I provided assistance. At that exact moment, Hikena's face suddenly turned pale. An intense pain struck, causing him to collapse. His soul, after a long time staying in the human realm, was being forcibly pushed out. Chi rushed to support Hikena. But before she could finish speaking, Ian's eyes opened, carrying a familiar confusion. Hikena had disappeared from that body. Right at this moment, on the ground, a small creature with a gray tail frantically wagged and screamed in rage. Hikena was now forced to possess the body of a small gray squirrel. Python appeared triumphant. He didn't expect the man would have a day like this. Ian gently picked up that small creature, ignoring Hikena's futile resistance. The most important thing was that they had to go meet the 2 dukes immediately. It turned out that during the time he was possessed, he had heard everything. Preventing the 3 stars from possessing those with abilities was urgent. Time no longer allowed for hesitation. As the 3 prepared to leave, Ian suddenly held Chi's hand to stop her. If she appeared, her true identity would be exposed before Duke Goff. He didn't want Chi to suffer any harm. Chi's face flushed hot. Then she gave a gentle smile. Thank you for worrying about me, but I can't just run away. Because she didn't want that painful future to repeat once more. I want to save everyone with my own hands. Back on this side, Duke Hibsman stared at Rodri, questioning him about Chick's true identity. Rodri only calmly replied that she was simply his daughter. Hibsman's rage flared up, while Robin Half and Deian hurried to intervene. Amidst that tense atmosphere, Duke Goff wore an evil smile. Conflicts were silently arising between the families. If the situation continued, Rodri would gradually lose the forces that could protect the horn. Goff was secretly satisfied. Coming to the academy this time was indeed not in vain. He had long been suspicious when Underwhite used the ability to see through despite having no real ability. It seems you have used every means to protect the horn, but this time things will not go your way, Black Rodri. He reached out to push the door, intending to take advantage of the chaos to find the horn. But as soon as the door opened, Goff froze. Before him stood Ian. The cold and sharp gaze blocked every calculation before it could even take shape. In the room, Hibsman gripped Rodri's wrist, his surging rage unable to be suppressed. The words Goff spoke earlier were like a blade cutting deep into his reason. The truth that Rodri's daughter was a horn and that it had been hidden all those years made Hibsman feel both betrayed and insulted. Rodri brushed his hand away, his gaze sharp and cold. I only wanted to protect my daughter. Hibsman's anger erupted even more violently. How could you do that? You aren't the only one with a family. I have a family too. My son almost left forever. While the atmosphere was suffocatingly tense, Richard interrupted in a low voice. Now is not the time to argue. His presence made everyone pause. And it was his reminder that made Rodri realize one thing. They absolutely must not let Goff encounter Chi. Outside the room, Ian was facing Goff directly. His eyes couldn't hide his vigilance as he questioned his father's appearance. Goff lost his patience and a violent anger erupted, but at that exact moment, Chick appeared, standing in front of Ian to block him. She showed no fear, her gaze determined to protect him. Upon recognizing Chick's true identity, Goff's morbid excitement was clearly revealed. In his eyes, there was only possessiveness and greed left. Ian immediately stepped up to shield Chi, separating her from that dangerous gaze. Right when the tension reached its peak, Python emitted violent sparks of electricity, warning of the arrival of the 3 stars. Hikena simultaneously activated his power. A brilliant golden circle opened, enveloping Chi and Ian, blocking the terrible reaction that was spreading, while Goff had been completely frozen in a layer of frigid ice. Standing motionless like a statue. From the shadows, Deian, Rob in half, and Richard gradually emerged, but their eyes were no longer human. All three exuded a cold aura identical to the awakened great stars. Hibsman and Rodri had both fainted, while Deian smiled with amusement as if enjoying the body he had just seized. Seeing her father lying motionless, she couldn't hide her worry and was about to rush out, but Ian held her back. The ones in front of them were no longer the people they knew. When a great star descends to Earth, a powerful reaction occurs, and when all three great stars arrive at the same time, that reaction is truly horrific. That is why everyone in the Academy has fainted at this moment. And that circle of light is protecting them from a similar fate. At this point, one star spoke up. "It seems you're having a fun game, Python. I didn't know you were in the human world. And Hikena, are you betraying us?" But Hikena was undaunted and spoke up to distract Richard. "What are you saying? Betraying who?" He jumped down from Ian and ran toward Richard. "I remember everything that day. I made a deal with you guys." But Hikena pulled out a glass jar glowing with brilliant gold light. Wasn't that just a temporary cooperation? When the glass jar emitted the brilliant golden light, Richard immediately became angry and was about to rush forward to stop it. But he was struck down by Python before he could counterattack. The black smoke was neatly captured, signaling that the two of them had finished off one. Now there were two left. She stood watching the scene before her, her mind in a mess. She knew she couldn't just stand by and watch. Was there any way she could help the two of them? As the two sides prepared for battle, Chick made a decision. She grabbed Python and asked to borrow his power. In that moment, purple smoke rose around her, blending with the power of the god of war. The eruption of power sent a shock through both Deian and Rob in half. Two flows of red and blue light were forcibly separated from their bodies, flying into midair, and then were captured by a gloating, laughing Hikena with a sealing jar. Afterward, the bodies of the two people collapsed to the floor, completely unconscious. She also collapsed from exhaustion, her heart still pounding from the aftershock. But she did not delay, immediately turning to Ian, worried for him, because after all, Goff was still his father. Ian looked toward his father. Duke Goff still stood there, frozen. His gaze was deep, as if he were seeing a nightmare that no one else could understand. While Ian's face was grim, his loathing gaze remained fixed in that direction. In the end, what did father see that made him so afraid? But that no longer mattered. He would not live like Goff. He would face the truth no matter how cruel and fight with his own will. When she softly called his name, Ian turned back to look at Chi. Holding her hand with a gentle smile, Ian felt his heart grow light, living just like this little girl. A moment later, the three glass jars containing the auras of three different colors vibrated slightly because of what was sealed. Inside, they were not original bodies, but merely the auras of the great stars. Hearing that, Chick quickly realized a worrying fact. It meant their original physical forms still remained within Deian, Rob in half, and Richard. Her gaze turned toward the three people unconscious on the chairs, a clear sense of unease rising. If the aura was separated but the body still existed, wouldn't that be extremely dangerous? Hikena casually confirmed that thought, startling Chi. But it was the people around them who faced the greatest risk, because when the aura is forcibly separated, the remaining power in the host body becomes uncontrollable and much more dangerous than before. The fleeting tension on Chi's face made Hikena laugh mockingly. "I've always thought you were quite naive, Horn." Python and Ian, standing nearby, could only chuckle awkwardly, witnessing the intimacy between the two of them. Python shifted his attention to Ian. "Are you really okay?" "Gov is still frozen by the power of a great star, and defrosting him is almost impossible." Ian replied with a calm smile that he himself was fine. The royal family would send an investigation team, but if he used his ability, he would somehow get through it. He repeatedly reassured them that those who used the hibiscus ability would not be suspected either. Python grimaced. "That's not what I meant." But looking at Ian flashing a faint, indescribable smile, Python could only sigh helplessly. The human world is as complicated as a graveyard. The next morning, the academy was bustling with people moving back and forth. Students were buzzing with talk about the school being closed due to yesterday's events. Amidst those noisy sounds, Deian stood in front of Chi and questioned her. "Are you a Horn? 3 years ago, were you the one who saved me? You suddenly got sick because you saved me, didn't you?" Chick turned her head away a bit awkwardly. A brat who dragged a 7-year-old child to that dangerous place only to abandon her. "Why would you save that brat?" Chick was surprised. Was he reflecting on that day? She took Chick's hand. "I saved you because I wanted to." She gave a gentle smile. "Like warm rays of sunshine. Since the day I was born, you are the first older brother I've ever had." Those words left Deian stunned, his face flushing hot with emotion. At this moment, Robin Half appeared and greeted them, and the atmosphere softened thanks to that. He told Chick that Hibsman had fully recovered. He was even healthier than before thanks to her purification. Hearing that, Chick truly breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, everything was gradually settling down, and the heavy feeling in Robin Half's heart was also relieved. Suddenly, Robin Half's eyes lit up, his face full of mystery. Chick being a horn means, A vision of a wedding ceremony between Robin Half and Chick appeared in his mind, making him unable to contain his joy. We are truly destiny! Seeing Robin Half like that, Deian couldn't help but get goosebumps. Is this guy crazy? Suddenly, Deian spoke to Chi in a low voice, surprising her. I had suspected it, but the fact that you really are a horn... He gently reached out his hand to stroke her head. Thank you. Right at this moment, Ian came running over in a hurry. He simply wanted to say goodbye to Chi before leaving. During that time, Ian mentioned that he had dreamed of a beautiful future. He reached out to take a leaf off the top of her head. Gently, he said, It seems good things will come soon. Ian smiled happily. See you again, Chi. That gentle smile made Chi's heart flutter a bit, her cheeks turning bright red. Night fell. In the large room of the castle, Python and Hikena finally crawled out of Chick's bag. After a short moment of rest, Hikena immediately became serious. He said they must return to the grave, not to leave forever, but to untangle the auras that had completely entered their bodies. The squirrel also hid the glass jars very carefully. Hearing that, Chi felt somewhat relieved, but Hikena's next words made her freeze. Before leaving, we need to find a way before your academy turns into a monster's nest. That is not something that will happen immediately. Perhaps it will transform gradually over many years. Magic, or rather the power of the stars, not only attracts humans but also draws in deformed creatures from the darkness. But since the great stars have touched this land, perhaps monsters will gradually gather here, Python explained in more detail. If the power of the stars is not completely separated from the academy area, that place will sooner or later become a monster's nest. That is a very troublesome as well as time-consuming task. Hikena stood by the windowsill very leisurely. The academy requires 8 years of study, right? There's still plenty of time. But Python was not optimistic at all. He would not let his precious contractor face any more danger. Chick listened to everything, a sense of unease rising in her heart. She understood that the path ahead would not be peaceful as Python and Hikena prepared to leave. Hikena suddenly paused to leave one last warning. This time we managed, but there is no guarantee that the future outcome will be different. Therefore, you must absolutely not let your guard down, Horn. Chick stood by the window frame, watching the shadows of the two stars gradually fade into the night. Those words made her heart tighten. Early the next morning, in a quiet room flooded with sunlight, Robin Half was patiently guiding Chick through her homework. The atmosphere between the two was gentle and comfortable, mixed with rare small laughs of the vacation. The green-haired woman smiled warmly at the sight. Even though it's a holiday, young Master Robin Half still came here to tutor the young lady. The young master is truly kind. Meanwhile, Duke Rodri, who was peeking at the two, said nothing. That peace was suddenly shattered when the door burst open. A servant entered to report that Duke Sadia had arrived. Before anyone could react, Sadia strode into the room with a natural air, a beaming smile on his lips as if this were his own home. Rodri immediately stood up, instinctively shielding Chi, his face becoming grave. Sadia's appearance made the atmosphere tense. He approached, with an attitude both friendly and hidden with unpredictable danger. I wanted to greet your daughter. Are you planning to prevent me from admiring the horn? Chick heard these words and felt unease rising in her heart. According to what Python once said, when the great stars descend, everyone faints due to the immense power. So why did they know her identity? Sadia placed a hand on Rodri's shoulder, his gaze very terrifying and looking extremely dangerous. Listen, I am also a duke. By day the birds obey me, and by night the mice follow my orders. But exactly who are those birds and mice? That is why I want to ask you, Lady Horn. Suddenly Sadia smiled happily. Do you want to marry Rick? That proposal left Chi stunned. Sadia continued to ramble on. I'm not saying this just because the boy is my son. But the boy has a handsome face and possesses quite impressive abilities, doesn't he? Furthermore, Rick will become the heir of the Sadia family after me. I also heard that my son likes the Lady Horn here. In contrast to his excitement, Rodri was extremely angry, wanting to lunge forward and punch that face. Amidst the tension reaching its peak, Robin Half unexpectedly stood up. With a flushed face and a slightly trembling voice, he boldly declared, "I also want to marry Chi." That sentence made the room seem to freeze. Chick was in total shock. Duke Roderick was fuming with rage while Sadia wore a cunning, amused smile. Not long after, Robin Half sat quietly alone on the steps outside. The pink-haired twin siblings curiously looked at his gloomy appearance and teased, "Can a human turn into a sea cucumber? A sea cucumber? It really looks like one." Deian appeared just in time to hear them recount the entire incident, from the marriage proposal to the fact that Robin Half was flatly rejected. The pink-haired girl added, "But perhaps if she saw Robin Half in a sea cucumber state, she would change her mind because the horn is so kind-hearted." In an instant, Deian couldn't help but imagine a bizarre vision of a wedding between Chick and Robin Half out of pure pity. That thought made his blood pressure rise. That absolutely will not happen. He approached Robin Half, put an arm over his shoulder, and quickly proposed a solution as if thinking of his friend. "About your proposal to the horn, I will tell her that it was because you lost a bet, so I punished you by making you do that." That help moved Robin Half deeply. He hugged Deian, thinking that if so, Chi wouldn't avoid him due to feeling pressured anymore, and he still had a chance. The two reached an agreement, but their motives were completely opposite. When night fell, moonlight covered the castle in silent silver. Chi stood alone on the balcony, her gaze directed at the starry sky, her heart unable to help but worry. Nearly a month had passed, yet Python and Hikena had still not returned. Just as her worry peaked, she heard a familiar voice. Python appeared in his original form, small but full of vitality. She was extremely happy because Python had returned safely after time recharging his power at the grave. Hikena had easily slipped into the human world to find out his own nature, true to his unpredictable personality. And the glass jars, containing the auras of the 3 great stars, had been hidden safely. Chi breathed a sigh of relief, the worry in her heart fading somewhat. She and Python bumped foreheads. "In any case, I'm very glad you're back safely, Python." The next morning, the carriage stopped before the academy gate. Chick had just stepped down when she met a brown-haired female student waiting there. The girl hesitantly asked to speak privately, carrying a sad expression. Through the fragmented story, Chick learned that the Gia family had mysteriously disappeared. The servants, knights, Duke Goff, and even Ian. The name Ian made Chick reel. But the girl found it strange because she had clearly seen Ian leaving the Goff family mansion a week ago. If that's the case, then everyone disappeared within just 1 week. Worry quickly took over Chi's mind that night. She sneaked into the Goff mansion. Python stood on her shoulder, sniffing the air, and then led her into a room. Chick stopped in front of a painting hanging on the wall. This must be the painting created when the Duke's wife passed away and the Duke began mistreating Ian, but Duke Goff can no longer wake up. I wonder if Ian is happy now. Right at this moment, Python suddenly called her over. Something was written on the mirror. The lines inside made Chi tremble. "Ian, did you write this? Why did you write it as if you were never coming back?" She held the shattered mirror in her hand and whispered, "Did you really disappear?" The image of Ian trying to smile and saying he would continue to live for her suddenly appeared vividly in Chi's mind. She softly called his name in the silent space, her heart extremely heavy. Time passed, and Chick had now become a beautiful 16-year-old young woman. Sunlight streamed through the glass onto her slender figure, reflecting off the carefully tended flower beds. Beside Chick, a pink-haired girl placed a teacup on the table and rested her chin on her hand, looking at her playfully. It was 15-year-old Lily Hibsman. Chick pointed towards the unfinished flower pots, saying she couldn't rest yet because she planned to plant more violets today. Lily stretched tiredly, complaining that hanging around the greenhouse was boring. And she couldn't help but exclaim that someone with such a striking appearance as Chick spent most of her time with soil and plants. That fact was what made the professors of the botany and magic departments fight over her all year long. Lily mentioned the cell phone tournament, suggesting Chick should participate this year. According to rumors, the principal had reached a special agreement. If Chick participated in cell phone, she would be free to choose her major, including botany and many other fields. Chick thought in silence. The cell phone is the most prestigious magic tournament where academies from across the Pan continent and the Luxa Empire compete. For many consecutive years, her academy had always placed second, never surpassing the Goodic Academy of the Pan continent. Lily kept persuading, believing that if she participated, the situation would change. Chick looked at the yellow flowers blooming in the sunlight, the result of her meticulous care, and slowly considered it. 6 months of competition meant being away from the greenhouse and the plants. She feared that in her absence everything would wither away. Just then, the small squirrel jumped onto her shoulder. Python appeared. His shrewd gaze seemed to see right through the contractor's heart. It turned out she wasn't just worried about the plants, but the academy as well. Building the greenhouse was, after all, a way to protect this place, because to reach the magic energy, she needed to cultivate the soil and nurture life. But 6 years had passed. Perhaps it was time she could let go of some of the burden. Furthermore, they had practiced together quite a bit recently. Participating in cell phone to test her strength wasn't a bad choice. Finally, Chi made a decision. She would consider registering for the tournament. Lily froze for a moment, then immediately jumped up in excitement. She excitedly declared she would support Chi both physically and mentally, from gathering opponent information to preparing tactics. Chi quickly waved her hand in refusal, but Lily still couldn't hide her mischievous look as she revealed an interesting piece of news. In the opponent lineup from Goodwick Academy, there was an extremely prominent student from the swordsmanship department. Not just because of his strength, but also because of his outstanding appearance with golden hair and eyes. That information made Chi pause. A vague sense of familiarity surged in her heart. Night fell deep within the monster forest. Beasts were struck down one by one under the cold blade. The green-haired man panted, clearly exhausted after the battle. Deian appeared behind him, mocking, "If you're this weak, you won't even be able to support Puppy next semester." These words startled the green-haired man into a denial. Deian turned to leave, then stopped being lazy and focus on training. "But I'm just an ordinary person. No matter how hard I try, I can never be equal to a genius like you." But then the green-haired man thought of a way to get a legitimate rest. "Thinking back, I received a message from Lady Chi yesterday." As soon as that name was uttered, Deian immediately stopped in his tracks. "She said that this time she will participate in the cell phone tournament. It seems she was finally persuaded by the professor's pleas." This news made Deian immediately angry. In his head, a vision of her getting injured in the arena already appeared. The green-haired man could only look on helplessly. The more worrying thing is probably that others will be hurt by Chi, right? But looking at Deian's murderous gaze, he tactfully changed the subject, asking if Deian wanted to go watch the tournament, as it would be the first cell phone experience for both of them. After all, those without abilities would not be allowed to participate. Deian mused in silence, feeling unwilling that he could only watch from the sidelines. Right then, he suddenly remembered something. The cell phone organizing committee had invited him to take the position of coach, a letter he had once discarded without a second thought. Without another word, Deian turned and left. The green-haired man asked in bewilderment where he was going, only to receive a cold reply: to dig through the trash. On this side, Hibsman strictly watched through the communication device placed in front of him, focusing on Chi. The news that she had applied for the cell phone tournament had clearly reached his ears faster than expected. Chick was a bit surprised, silently wondering to herself, since she had only completed the procedures a short while ago. Richard's father also appeared on another communication device. His face clearly showed worry. In their eyes, Chick was a precious horn who could not be allowed to suffer any harm. Hibsman pondered for a long time before finally deciding to follow her closely throughout the journey. Chi gave a forced smile. "The tournament rules state that participants are not allowed to bring guardians, sir." Hearing that, Richard's father suddenly had a bizarre idea, suggesting that if he couldn't go along as a human, he would disguise himself as a wolf to go with her. At that moment, Rodri also appeared through the communication device. He had complete trust in his daughter, but in his eyes, Chi had never been a child who needed excessive protection. Nevertheless, he didn't forget to tell her to take good care of herself. That permission made Chi unable to hide her joy. She was full of determination, promising to give her all and bring back the victory. But immediately after, she hesitantly mentioned her brother, wondering if he knew about this yet. Just thinking about Deian's reaction was enough to make her feel pressured. Rodri suddenly cleared his throat, as if considering something difficult to say. At that exact moment, the magic in the communication device ran low, forcing him to end the conversation. The 3 communication devices turned off one by one. Chick looked at them for a long time, a warm feeling rising in her heart. Those people clearly worried for her more than she thought. On her shoulder, Python spoke softly. "That concern isn't without reason, because they all owe their lives to you." Chick's gaze instinctively stopped at a newspaper on the table. A prominent news item talked about Duke Roswick, a person with abilities who had lived past 40, which was considered an extraordinary miracle. She suddenly remembered her father's hesitation earlier, and her heart couldn't help but feel uneasy. But for now, Chick should focus on more pressing matters. The story of a person with abilities with golden hair and eyes from the Hibsman girl made Chi unable to stop thinking of someone. The memory of a previous conversation with Lotus came back clearly. Back then, she had hoped the person Lotus saw was Ian. But Lotus had mentioned a different name. That person's name was Morgan Deian. Nevertheless, Chick still felt it didn't make sense. She had searched for Ian everywhere. If he were truly participating in a major tournament like Cell Phone, there was no way she wouldn't know. And Python agreed. She rested her head on her hand, her gaze drifting into the distance. Only that familiar name remained in her mind. In another place, a golden-haired young man was sitting alone on a stone bench. A girl with short hair, clutching a sword, came running over happily. She handed him the sword along with a small mirror that was carefully wrapped. The sword has been prepared exactly as requested. But the young man's eyes did not leave the cracked mirror fragment resting in the palm of his hand. To others, it was just an ordinary piece of a mirror, but to him, it held a completely different meaning. The girl didn't understand the fleeting expression on his face, only teasing him before telling him a new piece of news. This year's cell phone tournament will feature a very famous contestant with a magic level nearly reaching 98. That person seems to be Lady Roswick from the Luxa Empire. That information made the golden-haired young man slightly lift his head, his hair reflecting the colors of the sunset that was dyeing the whole sky golden. In a vast prairie region, a caravan of carriages followed one another along the foot of the mountain. On the window frame of one carriage, Python lay sprawled out, looking exhausted, his mouth constantly complaining. Chi worriedly rubbed his back. I told you 10 minutes before departure not to eat too many peanuts, but you didn't listen. Now karma has come. Suddenly, Python perked up his ears. Both he and Chick sensed an unusual surge of energy. The very next second, the ground suddenly shook violently, cracking open into large chunks and causing the carriage to wobble. A giant centipede emerged, blocking the caravan's path. Chick immediately reacted, firing a wave of electricity straight at the monster's back, forcing it to scream in pain. She jumped out of the carriage, quickly observing the situation. Python recognized the familiar energy. Surely one of the stars was very close by. He urged Chick to leave quickly and search. But right then, panicked screams rang out from behind. A swarm of ghostly bats descended, forcing the guards and mages to fall back into a defensive position. Chick quickly set up a magic circle in the air. Lightning bolts tore through the wind and struck down upon the monsters. After finishing her work, she did not hesitate to run in the direction Python pointed. However, another scream of terror rang out. She saw a female student kneeling before the fangs and claws of a ferocious wolf, trembling and desperately calling for help. Ignoring Python's warning, Chick quickly rushed forward. The moment the wolf lunged, a sword suddenly appeared, blocking the attack with slashes so fast the naked eye could not keep up, tearing the monster's body apart. Its carcass quickly collapsed to the ground. The golden-haired man stood there, his sword still carrying a lingering chill. His face was sharp, his gaze calm yet resilient like a warrior in the daylight. She slowly stepped closer to where the golden-haired young man was standing. His appearance made her freeze for a moment, because he looked too much like the silhouette of Ian in her memories. She stood dazed and still until Python suddenly tapped her head hard, pulling her back to reality. It coldly reminded her that the person in front of her was not Ian White. It could not sense that familiar presence, which was enough to confirm it. Chi did not argue, though a vague, nameless sadness rose in her heart. Right then, the young man suddenly turned his head, detecting a danger behind. A ferocious wolf with blood-red eyes was quietly approaching. Without any hesitation, he grabbed Chi's hand, pulling her to one side and standing in front to shield Chick. He quickly chanted a spell. A powerful surge of magic flared up, making the wolf howl in pain. In just a moment, the monster was completely defeated. The danger passed, and Chick stood silently observing. The way he used magic made her even more certain that this person was not Ian after all. Perhaps this was the person who had won the tournament last year. Her gaze accidentally stopped at a ring dropped on the ground. Then Python immediately became excited, recognizing it as a rare star fragment. Chi leaned down to pick up the ring, quietly observing it, while Python kept urging her to try using it. However, instead of keeping it, Chi approached to ask the young man, which almost made Python go crazy. A star fragment has no master. It belongs to the one who finds it. The young man only smiled gently, denying ownership. That attitude somewhat satisfied Python, while Chick was instinctively stunned. When he smiled, he looked like a different person. The conversation was interrupted when a short-haired girl came running over in a hurry. It was the person who had just been saved. The girl profusely thanked Chick, though Chick modestly suggested she hadn't done anything significant. Through a few exchanges, Chick realized they both wore Goodick Academy uniforms and were on their way to cell phone. The girl's name was Hamatrick, and the golden-haired young man was Morgan Deian. But the fact that Morgan came all the way here surprised his friend quite a bit, since this place was quite far from where they were camping. Hearing that, Morgan could only awkwardly make an excuse that it was getting late. The distance to the campsite was still quite far, making both Goodick students unable to hide their worry. Seeing this, Chi suggested they travel together. They could contact Goodick Academy via carrier pigeon and head towards cell phone together, which would be safer. Hamas hesitated slightly because, as opponents, they couldn't ask for favors, but Morgan accepted the offer. "Please help us, Lady Chi." As the three prepared to set out, Chick suddenly paused as a doubt arose in her heart. How did this person know her name? That evening, they managed to return to Chick's Academy resting place in time. In the flickering firelight, Morgan explained that it was because Chick was already very famous. Rumors about a beautiful, exceptionally talented white-haired lady had spread through all the academies, even as far as Goodick. That made Chi extremely embarrassed, especially when Morgan looked at her with an inexplicably gentle gaze. Chi tried to maintain a calm appearance, but her cheeks had turned bright red at some point. At this time, Morgan took the initiative to say goodbye to go to rest early because he was tired after a long day. Before leaving, he left a warm smile sufficient to make Chi's heart flutter slightly. After Morgan disappeared, the group of female students around immediately exploded. Heimat was surrounded by countless questions. Her gaze kept turning toward Chi for help. Reluctantly, Chick had to clear the way and take Hamas back to her tent to rest. When she returned, Chick couldn't help but laugh at the scene earlier. Python on her shoulder also looked delighted. What could be done? Morgan was just that handsome. When she saw that Morgan's tent light was still on, she originally only intended to drop by to check in. But she accidentally witnessed a conversation that left her stunned. Morgan was talking to a sphere emitting golden light, his face grim. "I'm sorry, we failed in using monsters to attack the Imperial Academy." That sight made Chi freeze. The next morning, the group finally arrived safely at cell phone. Hammett lingeringly hugged Chi before parting, feeling both regretful and excited about soon becoming rivals in the arena. Chi smiled and waved as she saw them off. But as the figures of Morgan and Hammett completely disappeared, that smile also gradually faded away.